All right. I think we're live. Welcome everyone to another episode of Kowalski Analysis. I think we're live. Oh. Welcome everyone to another episode of Kowalski Analysis. I think that's you. Welcome everyone to another episode of Kowalski Analysis. I think that. Hondo, do you have more than one? Do you have another device open?
I did. It's off now. I'm just on Zoom now.
Do you have another device open?
I did. It's off now. I'm just on Zoom now.
Do you hear that echo?
Yes, I don't. Let's see. I don't have it. Let's see. Yes, I don't. Let's see. I don't have it. Let's see. Is there still an echo here?
Hello.
Is there still an echo here?
I don't hear an echo.
Hello. Did you hear that?
Is there still an echo here?
I don't hear an echo.
Riley, did you just hear your voice?
Yeah, I didn't hear an echo either. Yeah, it looks like it's fixed.
Okay, I took the internet out. I just took the web page off.
Yeah, it looks like it's fixed.
It's not fixed.
I took the internet.
There's like a 5-second delay.
Tell you what, I will.
It's like a 5-second delay.
Might have to get out of this. Yeah. Tell you what, I will. Rob, I have your link. I'll come right back in the room.
Sounds good.
Rob, I have your link. I'll come right back in the room.
Sounds good.
Rob, I have your link. I'll come right back.
Sounds good. Check 1, 2. Okay. 1, 2. There it is. Let me leave. Riley, I'm gonna make you a host. Let me leave. Riley, I'm gonna make you a host. Just let me back in.
Yeah, I got you.
Let me back in.
He only thinks I'm letting him back.
I'm on.
Okay, sweet.
There's no echo.
Yeah, I don't hear it either. Don't see him trying to join yet.
Rob has left the room, I assume.
There we go. He just joined.
Hey guys, how are we now?
We're good.
Sweet. All right. Not today, Satan.
Hallelujah.
All right. Thanks for bearing with me, guys. All right. Welcome to episode 100 of Kowalski Analysis.
We can't
Very
see
excited.
you, Rob.
Can't see me. All right. Here we go. My bad. There we go. All right. Here we go. All right. Welcome to episode 100 of Kowalski Analysis. Well, I got a big one for you today. I can't believe it's actually been 100 episodes. So I'm excited. This is appropriate because we have a big guest to celebrate our, what is that? What is 100? Like a centaur? What is that? It's not a millennium. It's a, whatever it is. Centennial. Our centennial podcast. We have on bro Hondo Solomon. And this is a guy I've seen quite a bit of his work. Tonight's episode is entitled Polygamy as Economic Warfare. And we're going to dive deep into this topic. So thank you, everybody, for being here with us today. I had a little opener I wrote up that I want to read to you guys. This is my new opener for Kowalski Analysis. Welcome to the Kowalski Analysis, the podcast where we delve deep into the topics that most shy away from. In a world where the surface level often gets the most attention, we're here to explore the depths of what it truly means to navigate life as a single Christian man in today's society. From the complexities of biblical polygyny to the journey of strengthening the masculine spirit, we're here to discuss the unpopular and often overlooked truths that the church might not be talking about. This is a space for open minds and courageous hearts. Whether you're here seeking guidance, understanding, or just curious about the paths less traveled, you're in the right place. Our conversations aim to challenge, inspire, and empower you to live a life of purpose and faithfulness. Ladies, we're glad you're tuning in also. Your perspectives and insights are invaluable as we journey together through these discussions. So to all our listeners, let's dive deep into the depths, confront the hard questions, and discover the unspoken truths together. Welcome to Kowalski Analysis. All right. I like that. That was pretty good. I'm going to have to read that every time now. So this is a topic that you guys have heard me talk quite a bit about over the last few months, and we have a real OG in the space, Mr. Hondo Solomon, who's been making content around this and living this lifestyle for many years. So tonight we're going to be breaking down the historical, cultural, and economic implications of that lifestyle. And let me tell you who Brother Hondo is. Hondo Solomon is an ethnographer and author of the Polygamist Papers, which I'm currently reading, as you can see here. I'm almost through it. Polygamist Papers are an introduction to polygamous culture and its principles, pitfalls, and ethics. He has formal training in Ayurvedic and Chinese medicine. I'm not sure if I pronounced that right. And he's a student of Hatha Yoga. His insights into polygamy originate from his childhood in Southeast Michigan, where he was born into a family of military and law enforcement personnel, educators, inventors, and musicians. In addition, he worked in the golf industry for over 2 decades, where his research was verified and endorsed by high net worth individuals. At age 17, he ventured into Germany at the behest of his relatives. This sparked an interest in nomadic life and minimalism. Having learned to read, speak, and write several languages and scripts and basic Filipino and Ayurvedic herbalism on his journey, he's currently living between the U.S. and Southeast Asia as he studies for a Bachelor of Finance and Master's in Cybersecurity. The follow-up to his first book, Polygamy as Economic Warfare, debuts winter 2024. To learn more about his work, you can visit his YouTube channel. Welcome to Kowalski Analysis, Bro Hondo.
I appreciate it. I appreciate it. Everybody just calls me Brother Hondo for short. You know, it's just an abbreviation or whatnot. But I definitely appreciate you having me, Rob, because I saw your work maybe a year ago, and you know, I was actually going to kind of a sabbatical, but I was just looking for other people who were teaching, and I found your work then. And then, of course, Pete Rambo got us in contact, so that was a good look. But I appreciate you having me on. I appreciate your time and everybody and all the guests as well.
Yeah, man, I'm excited to learn from you. I'm a baby in the space, so it's exciting to get somebody that's older and wiser. Not older, but just older in the space. I'm probably actually older than you, but you're just, let's just say, wiser. But let's just start off with let's start off with maybe the I guess the obvious question, like, why did we entitle this Polygamy as Economic Warfare? Why are you passionate about? Actually, what is that? I guess the biggest misconception that I've heard, or at least one of them, was, man, that's expensive. You better make a lot of money if you're going to have more than one wife. And you're actually saying, no, this is economic warfare. Can you explain it?
All right, so we need to break it down in parts. So economic warfare is when a more powerful entity, whether it's an individual or a government, we in our current world, it's a cabal of individuals. It's actually an oligarchy. There's actually a religious oligarchy that runs the earth. Okay, they're the ones who behind the scenes. You never hear their names. They're the ones who make the phone calls. They send information down. That's when these entities, or individual or an entity, will somehow hamper the growth and development of the people they subjugate. Okay, so you'll hear economic warfare, this phrase, used in a lot of political circles. You know, once you get into these sort of these meetings that don't get broadcast on all the channels, they use this term quite a bit. So you're talking about many spheres of what I call spheres of power. Okay, so you have society, and I'm going to define, Rob, I'll list them, then I'll go back and define each one. So you have, for example, you have social, which is how you relate with each other, you know, in a particular group. Okay, you have religion. Obviously, that's the deity you worship or the objects of the deity that you worship. So whether you're Hindu, Christian, Jewish, etc., this is going to be something that ties the family. And just for those who may be atheists, just want to throw this out there. The vast majority, 99% of the polygamous families on the planet are deeply religious. So that's just something to consider. And Rob, later I can actually tell why I said that, because there's for a moment there was sort of a movement of people to say, well, we should get rid of all the, we should just not listen to all the religious polygamists. It was a thing for a minute. Well, anyway, you also have the esprit de corps. Okay, that's spirituality. Esprit de corps, the spirit of the group. Okay, that's how the actual household relates with each other. That's, for example, in my household, everybody's pretty rugged. We can all be easily nomadic. We can move from place to place. We can move at the drop of a dime. All of us have backpacks ready to go. And we've actually done that when I was in the Philippines. We've gotten up and literally within seconds, we were like, okay, here's the ticket. We're going somewhere else. And we did that for weeks at a time. So that's sort of how we relate with each other, through nature, through trees, through the forest, things like that. It's very, very, the nuts and berries and sticks and stuff like that people make fun of. The granola crowd, that's kind of how we are. So you also have sex. Obviously, the sex is involved, and that means you have to understand, in the Bible, in Hebrew, it's called the Nida, or the Nida laws. You have to understand Nida laws, which are cleanliness laws. That means, if you're sleeping with 2 or 3 women in a bed, if you're actually engaging in intercourse, that actually can cause disease. So a lot of people don't know that you can actually cause disease because you're sharing fluids. Once bodily fluids leave the body for a few minutes, there's an auto intoxication that occurs. That's why after you have sex, even in Torah, it tells you to wash and you're unclean until the evening. That's the reason that it says that. Okay. What else you have? You have politics. Politics is how you present yourself to the world on an individual basis and as a family unit. Okay. That's, in other words, how do you dress? Like, my family has a dress code. When we go certain places, we wear certain colors. We wear certain styles of clothing. If we're just out on the street on a regular day, we blend in with everybody else because we don't want to be targeted. And that's a very good thing. Speaking of being targeted, now you get into combat. Combat is the thing. Everyone should be combat trained. Everyone has to be trained in situational awareness, weaponry, short and long range weaponry. That's understanding not just situational awareness, but that's knowing how to travel in an emergency, who to contact. We've got all that already set. And it took many years to do that. But you also have to find women. In our case, since we're men, we have to find women who understand those principles. That's one reason why I prefer my women coming from a land that is more rugged, that is a little bit more dangerous, because that heightens the situational awareness of the people involved, including myself, because I've been nomadic even in the United States for most of my adult life. My situational awareness is a bit heightened, and you're constantly moving like that. So you have commerce, which is split up into 2 groups. You have industry, you have finance. So when you engage in commerce, that's essentially manufacturing and then trade. Okay. So industry is what you make from home, and that includes your intellectual property. And then finance is you reaping the fruits of your labor from that industry. And now you're engaging in trade. It's just like when I wrote a book, I took time to write that book. That means now that's industry. And now every month I get paid for a book that I wrote. That's a thing that individually every member of the family should be working on, as well as a group. Okay, so those are the things that you have to watch for. And a law, you also want to understand the law. The way that I teach polygamy is so that no matter what women you have, no matter what the race, ethnicity, cultural background, you can take those women anywhere with you in the world when you travel. That means everyone has passports, means everyone has all the paperwork up to date. That means you'll have all of your checkups. I mean, every point that I'm making just in the last 5 minutes, I can break that down further for the next 20, 30 minutes. It gets really, really, really complex. So polygamy is complex, but it's not difficult if you know what you're doing.
Yeah. Now you really come at this from a very strategic approach. It's not like you're not just out there. You're looking for women that speak different languages. I heard you mention a couple different things on pizza.
Rob, that's actually a requirement. I want to point that out to everybody. I would not take a woman into my family who is not fluent in at least 2 languages. I just don't do it. I speak 2 languages. So why would I want a woman who speaks less than 2 languages?
Mm.
And plus, that allows us to cover a large percentage of the world's population. For example, my late consort, I told you one of my consorts passed away recently. She spoke 11 languages. So everywhere we went in her country, I mean, we were fine. And she was teaching me all of the languages that she knew. She was teaching me just basics so that I could function if I were by myself. And she understood it because her godparents were Muslims. So she actually traveled nomadically with her godparents all around the Philippines, north, south, east, and west. So she picked up these languages along the way, and she ended up being fluent in most of those 11 languages, and she understood 3 more. My other consorts also speak at least 3 languages. But for my system, for the Solomon clan, I only choose women who speak 2 or more languages.
I love it. I mean, it's wild because it really goes back to, if you look at the way it was in the beginning, where God created a woman to be a helpmate for Adam. So you're actually thinking this is my vision is to travel, to do these different things, commerce and some of the things you just mentioned. And you're actually being very strategic in the women that you're choosing to come alongside you to help you reach that place. It's not this notion of, oh, I fell in love, like, something that kind of indicates maybe like you're falling, like you're out of control, like versus just being very practical and pragmatic about it a little bit and saying, no, this is what I'm doing with my life, and this is what I'm looking for, the kind of woman I'm looking for to help me get there. But in addition to that, I mean, do you also look for like the feelings of love and chemistry and all those things, or does that come second?
Well, yes, love is properly defined. Men display love by what we do for other people. You have brotherly love, you have filial piety. That's another form of love. That's your devotion and understanding the sanctity of family life, specifically your relatives, your blood relatives. But the romantic love is displayed by men through our sex play with our women, that romantic aspect. But you should never marry because of romantic purposes. You should never do that because it negates what I call alliances. See, we need to redefine. We need to have a new nomenclature. That's why in Polygamy is Economic Warfare, actually, in the very beginning of the book, I have a whole lexicon so that we can all get on the same page. I actually define terms and defining it according to family structure. For example, I was just talking with one of the brothers today who he actually has 7 wives, and most of them are from different parts of Africa. Okay. This is one of my good brothers. And he's kind of low key, he stays behind the scenes, but I've known him for a few years. And he lives right here in the United States, but most of his women are in Africa, across different parts of Africa. Pardon me. And I just told him today that, when you go into a woman, you're always looking to form an alliance. Men need to start thinking like that. That word should always pop in your head. Is this woman someone I want to make an alliance with? So now you're thinking it from a military perspective. That's another aspect of family life is military. That's part of economic warfare. See, so going to choose women based on what they bring to the table. For example, I'm getting to know a woman right now, and she's not my consort yet, but I'm getting to know her. And, one of her close relatives that she actually lives with is the mayor of a large city, like actually a major city in her country. See, so I'm very strategic with that. And she understands very strict codes of behavior. And because I was raised by 9 combat veterans, I understand protocol. So whatever type of women that you get, they're always going to be an expression of who you are. Different parts that may not always bubble to the surface. So, for example, if you're a man who used to be, say, a professional model, and say you're a professional model for 10 years, you're used to a certain type of lifestyle, you're going to get women who match that lifestyle. You can't get rid of that habit, especially if you were doing that from a young age. Most guys who were models later in life, like say 20s and 30s, they were models when they were late teens, early 20s. So you start to form those habits when you're young. You're used to that type of woman. You're used to dealing with 9s and 10s. You're not going to devolve and go back and get you a 7.
Right.
You're not going to, it's not going to happen. You're going to have some thin, model from Russia, your arm. And even if you're 50, you're going to go get a nice 20, 25-year-old who understands poise and certain types of behavior, and you can take her to certain types of events. See, especially if you've expanded already as a man. So your women are always going to be an expression of who you are. So I always get women, for example, who they don't need their nails done all the time. They can, that's fine. You know, that's fine sometimes. But you know, I can take my women into the jungle and we can go live there for years. It's not a problem, and nobody bats an eyelash. It's just fine. We're growing the food, and that's cool. And we're probably write books, you know, things like that. It's just men have to. What I've noticed, Rob, is that most men who are entertaining this, being a polygamist, they want to try to reinvent the wheel. And they want to try to, well, you got to be this type of guy. Well, I can't be Rob. Rob can't be me. Okay. And you like, we're two different men. So you're going to attract a certain type of woman. And plus, you have your personal taste. And I have my personal taste. You have to look at that. So, you know, as far as getting the women is concerned, as far as economic warfare is concerned, you have to consider the depths of that woman's soul. Like, in other words, just watch her as she handles problems, just before you even take her on. One thing that I look for is, for example, and this has everything to do with economic warfare, because we're going to be engaging in some type of business or just running a household, because economy is a Greek word. Echo means house. Nomos is knowledge of. And in Greek thought, whatever you say you believe, if you don't do it, then you don't believe it. That's Greek thought. See? So economos, economy, is management of the house. That's literally what that word means. But business schools, for example, including the one I attend, they define economics as, you know, trade, you know, just commerce, like you shipping stuff and making money, bean counting. That, and they stop there. But it's like, no, you're dealing with people. So because people are deep and complex, that's why I expanded this thing into the spheres of power that I mentioned. So yes, engaging in economic warfare from a polygamous vantage point means that you have more people on deck. And when everyone is on the same page, you have a synergy that creates that esprit de corps I mentioned. Now you don't add when you let's say when you so-called add a woman, you're at the power that you gain exponentializes. It doesn't even multiply, it exponentializes. So then you add a second woman. Let's say you have a woman, right? That's power. You have actually exponentialized yourself. Then you get two women, two wives, two consorts, two concubines. Now you get a third woman. It keeps expanding. It keeps expanding. It's not addition, because every woman is complex in and of herself. So you're adding all these things, and then you as a man have to take time to get out and get to know the women. But you have to see how you can weave them into this mix, even if they don't live in the same household, even if they don't live on the same property. You still have to consider how you're going to weave them together. Okay, that's really the important thing. So when guys have all these women, you know, I've seen guys who got 5, 6 women that they're dealing with, usually sexually. They go out sometime. They can't get them on the same page. And that goes back to the man. That's the man's fault. See, as soon as one woman rebels, you got to kind of put her on the bubble, on the edge of the bubble, because you can't have a corporation unless everybody is on the same page. And you're supposed to get paperwork on your women anyway. You're supposed to have legally binding contracts. That's what you're supposed to have. No woman should step inside your house without contracts.
Well, can you explain the bubble? Does that mean basically like being on probation at work?
Yeah, basically. You know, every man has your economy is a sphere. It's not a circle, it's a sphere. Okay, you're going 720 degrees all the way around. And if a woman wants to get close to you and you're getting to know her, you know, you got to let her in a little bit so she can get to know you a little bit. But you should always remain somewhat of a mystery to a woman. She doesn't have to know every last thing about you. You have to know everything about her, because you're hiring her, essentially, because she's your responsibility. So even in the modern age, when women say, well, you don't own me. Okay, well, if I don't own you, I don't have to pay anything for you. You can buy your own house, and I'll see you when I see you. See, we got to start talking like that to women. We got to start being straight up and talk business.
I love your confidence. I love the confidence. That's really the key to this. I was listening to before our talk.
Hopefully that answered your question, Rob. I'm sorry, I was
no, it was great. No, I love it. I just, you know, I think the main thing here, I think I was listening to a video of you by How Do I Bring It Up? that's a question you said you get from a lot of guys, and you're like, I really don't know how to answer that. You gotta say it, and then you gotta stand in it. I'm like, oh yes, I said, that's what I've told the guys so many times. I'm like, you just gotta stand in it, and I actually it kind of inspired me to I tweeted this after I listened to it. I said, women have a keen intuition for sensing when a man isn't firm in his convictions.
Yes.
If as a man you fail to assert your boundaries with confidence, fearing the loss of her, she'll continue to disregard your limits and subsequently lose respect for you. Because you basically said, like, if you come to a week where you're like with fear, afraid of losing her, that she might go if you continue down this path, they can sense it, and then they're never gonna get on board with it, basically. And I just thought there was so much wisdom in that.
Well, if you don't mind, I'd like to elaborate. I'll
Sure.
give you real life examples.
Yeah.
So one of my consorts said to me, we were just having a private moment. I was traveling actually in her area where her family was. I just thought we wanted some privacy. I went and got us a hotel instead of us staying with the relatives. And I remember, and I could still feel it because the sun was beaming in. It was a nice day, and she just kind of opened up because she was very, very. She's one of the most intelligent people I'd ever met. So she says, I don't care if you have 100 girlfriends. She said, but they got to take care of you. She said, when you return to my house, you have to be energetic. Like they can't just be, your nails aren't done. She's like, your nails should be clipped and cleaned. Your face should be cleaned. Like you shouldn't have any pollution from the traffic on your face. Your face all shiny and stuff. She said, how come your other woman didn't clean your face off? And she went on a rant against my other woman for about 30 minutes. She was just snapping. She was joning. I mean, it was legitimately funny. And I let her do that. And that's another, just as a side note, we have to allow our women to express displeasure with certain things, even if it's with us. If they're doing that respectfully, sometimes we have to listen to them. We might have slipped, we might have let something pass us by that we didn't understand. And that's something that I'm still learning. So I'm not an elder, but I am older. And that's something women look for, at my age anyway. Women are always asking, and this goes directly to your question, because I'm trying to weave all this in because it's a lot. But when you just tell them, because at my age, women are always asking, well, why are you single? And I trip them up. I always say, I never told you I was single. Why would you assume that? Just because I'm talking to you. It's like, what? And they always stand like, what do you, wait, you mean you have a wife? I'm like, well, I have consorts. Like, oh, you mean like the old Englishman? I was like, yeah, it's a very royal title. I have consorts. Wow. Huh. So why are you talking to me? One woman, I still know her. She's not my woman, but she's so fine. I was like, because you're fine. I saw you. I saw those hips. And I had to talk to you. She was like, oh my God. She started giggling and she liked it. She still gave me her number. We still talk. We still talk. So she actually likes me, but I don't know if I want to bring her in. It's just because you can spend time vetting. And this is the advantage of having at least two women, because you would never feel like you're in a rush to go grab this other woman just because she might be the one. You don't have you don't have those problems. You just erased 80% of your relationship issues by having two women.
Mm-hmm.
And ironically, most men, the men who are skilled, have less problems with women when you have multiple women. Now I know personally, when I've had one woman, I had all the problems in the world and I made less money. As soon as another woman was approaching, this is when I first I got like two. I mean, my income doubled. Literally, my income doubled. There was like there's a certain magic to it. And I'm literally mean that like occult magic. And I don't mean the dark arts. I'm talking about just symbolism and energy, things like that. There's a certain occult energy to that. When women come around, especially when they see what you're doing, they're like, oh, and that's why men who are prominent, whether they're athletes, actors, or whether they're billionaires, that's why those women get on board, because they're like, oh, this man know how to handle business. That's also why some women don't mind you having multiple women. So, for example, all but one woman I've ever been with understood like what I was doing in life. Like, 'cause they knew when I wake up at 4 or 5 a.m., even on my days off, and they see me meditating, and they're like, wait, how do you got so much energy at 6 a.m.? Like you want to go play basketball? Like what's up with that? Women like that because they see you taking care of yourself, your mind, your spirit, and your body, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they see, oh, you got enough energy to handle another woman. As a matter of fact, there was a woman I used to talk to up until recently. She didn't pass all my tests, and that's another thing. You have to have a battery of tests that you run on women because you're the founder of the company. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
you create the parameters by which your company is going to operate. Okay, so I was talking to this woman, and come to find out, her father had just the brothers and sisters that she grew up with were, I believe it was 16 of them, right? But she said her brothers and sisters did not know how many other brothers and sisters they had because their father, he traveled for his job. Like he would go, he worked in the mines in their country. And he made good money. So he would send money back, but he lived like, I think it was about 10, 12 hours away where he worked. He would come back home every few months to check on any babies that he made. And he would come back right before his children were born. And then he would stay a few months after, so, to kind of nurture the baby. Then he would go back to work.
Mm-hmm.
So something she told me is that she was attracted to me. She said, the fact that the women from my culture, they're a lot. They're very dramatic, they're very energetic, and they're very sexual. She said the fact that you can handle, your three that you have, at that time I had three. She said that's very attractive to me because you remind me of my father. She said, and I know if you can take care of them sexually, emotionally, and then you have enough. And she told me, she said, you make enough money where you can go visit them. She said, that means a lot to me. That's what attracted me to you. So
It's like hiring an employee that's already got some experience, right? Like
yes.
if you marry under monogamy only, that first wife, she's the one that takes the biggest risk because she's marrying you and she don't know what kind of husband you're going to be. This woman can look at you and already know that, and that's a very safe, pragmatic decision.
Yeah, yes, it is. So speaking of pragmatism, so remember, I want everyone like to hear this. So there's polygamy, and I teach from that what I mentioned, the occult perspective, symbolic perspective. Again, not the dark arts. I don't trust in that, right? But we're talking about energetics. We're talking about symbolism. Polygamy is patriarchal, is pragmatic, and is progressive. It's always in the past, it's always in the present, and it's always in the future. So everybody got that. So it's patriarchal, past, it's pragmatic, present, and it's progressive. So you have to, as a man, you have to always look ahead, and you have to have women who really understand. I got to go to church now. They understand your vision. They understand your vision. So those are very, very important things, and it's important too. And this is something I'm doing. I'm actually sort of collecting everybody into one region at least, if not the same land, because the way the world is now, you have to be closer. You have to be physically closer. Plus, as a man, you can sort of monitor your household better that way. And when I say household, we're not talking about the physical home, la casa if you speak Spanish, but we're talking about the entire family in its modality, like while it's operating. You want to have some jurisdiction over that. And that's another thing too. Men have to understand how that particular country works if it's not their country. If they want to move abroad, they have to understand residency, permanent residence. They have to understand citizenships. And I tell every man, you should have at least 2 permanent residencies and 1 additional citizenship. Mine are actually going to be approved soon. So I got that coming too. And what that does, that gives you latitude by which to operate. So now you can jump from one country to another, even if, say, the government becomes oppressive because we're engaging in what? Economic warfare. So during the pandemic, a lot of people just packed up and they said, oh, well, I have a residency in Paraguay. And they bounced. They went to Paraguay and they camped out for 3 years. Why? Because they have a house there, a rental, or they own a house, or they own a piece of land. They'll go pitch a tent, go sleep in the grass if they want to. It doesn't matter. It's yours. And it's something my mother told me. She was a real estate agent when I was coming up for several years. She said, son, when you become a man, you buy some land. And I said, well, my family got land because I grew up with a family. Most of the elders, most of everybody owned their houses and their cars and stuff. So I'm like, well, why do I can just come home? She said, no. You need to have your own land. And I encourage every man to purchase land in cash, buy it in cash so that you don't have a mortgage or you don't owe the bank anything. Okay, so that's just to kind of go into what you asked me there. Hopefully,
I love
again,
it.
question.
No, man, there's just so much to talk about. You said so many things that would trigger thoughts. Um, you were mentioning how that woman was interested in you with, she saw that you had the three wives. And there's so much now that I've discovered this information, there's just so much that makes sense in the world that didn't make sense before. Like it's completely obvious that God's okay with polygyny. When you look at things like women like men that other women want. It's like it's harder to meet a woman when you're single than it is when you have a girlfriend. Like
Yes.
when a good looking woman likes you or is dating you, other women want you because it's like that, stamp of approval on you. So there's that. There's also the fact that older men like younger women. That's never going to change. It's never going to be changed that younger women like older men. And it's also, if you look at when the biological clock stops for a woman, 35, 40 years old, men can make babies till we die. All these things. And you're like, come on. Like, you really don't think God's cool with polygyny. It becomes overwhelmingly obvious when you look through that lens. It's like, of course he's okay with it. Instead, what we do is we fight against it and we try to tell people that, shame the behavior and men are just acting like pigs. And what my question, I guess, with it is, was this done intentionally? Because I heard you say something on Pete Rambo's podcast, and you said, I think you had asked maybe a general, some military leader, what would be the best way to kind of conquer a foreign
The best way
enemy?
to, yes, the
And
best
you
way to
mentioned
subjugate people long term. Yes.
marital laws. You said change the marital laws, right?
Yes. Yeah. Once you invade, you killing men and women and children, and then of course in most wars, even up to the modern times, you see rape occur also. So there's trauma. So there's trauma outside of guns and knives. They're actually committing other atrocious acts. So that carries into the genetic line of the people who are conquered, which is again this form of economic warfare. You have to guard against that by sometimes starting over the national line or the cultural line or the ethnic line. See, so once they go in and they do these things to people and then they corral them. If you notice in these so-called war-torn countries, I mean, it's happened here to various people here. You corral them into a place that you want, and then you take the most valuable resources. Once you do that, you change the marriage customs because now, Rob, I can prevent you from having 46 children. You don't have
Right.
to, I'm not going to let you have 46 children because if say 25 of those children are men and each of them produces an average of 5 children. Oh, look at that. Look at that.
Right.
Just in 40 to 50 years, Rob, you just created at least 200 people. You see that?
Right.
So
So if you have a race of people doing that, then they could take over.
yeah, now my children and my grandchildren and great-grandchildren, great-great-grandchildren don't have to worry about you.
Hmm.
See, now I'm going to repeat what I said on Pete Rambo's podcast. When I was a golf caddy many years ago, well, it wasn't that far. It was only I believe this is around 10 years ago, I believe, when I was still caddying. I caddied for a man who was a Marine tank commander. Okay. This guy was built like Randy Kuchar. This dude was huge. This dude like six, I don't know how he fit in a tank. This dude like six, he was like The Rock or something like that. And I remember asking him, he was like, yeah, I was in the military. We were talking about what we do aside from golfing and caddying. And he said, "Wow, I'm in the Marines. I'm actually a reservist now, but I was in the Marines." I said, "Have you seen combat? Because I come from a military family." He said, "Yeah, I have." I said, "Let me tell you, let me ask you something. I have a theory." So, and I've given this theory a name. It's going to be in the book. I don't want to reveal it yet, but I have the theory. I've given the theory a name in the book. But I said, if I want to take over, say, an entire country, let's say the country has 100 million people, and I don't want you to produce. What do you think that? Because my theory is that if I engage in combat, open combat, and then I bring in religious leaders and I bring in generals and other officers to tell the people they can't marry and I change their marriage custom, do you think that's more effective than anything else once you've actually occupied the territory, or do you think there's another way? He said, actually, that is the best way for us to subjugate the people long term. He said, 'cause if
Wow.
We control your marriage customs, and we don't let you marry, for example, unless under certain circumstances we want to breed you. He said, we got you. We got you for at least 5 generations. That's coming from a Marine tank commander. See?
Wow. I'll show you this image I came across. See if I can see this here.
Yes. Yes.
It reminds me of that.
Yes. Yes. And whoever made that meme is exactly right. Now, by engaging in monogamy, you also change how you view sex. You also change how you view marriage in general. You also view how you, you also change how you view potential. See, a man is supposed to have limitless potential in what he does in the earth. Now, when you go back in Bereshit, or what we call, Genesis, okay, Bereshit is Hebrew for Genesis. Once we go back there, we find that the first, what I call the prime directive in the book, the next book, I call it man's prime directive, coming directly from the Creator: be fruitful and multiply. Now, so that has, and I use an ancient system of biblical exegesis called Pardis, or Paradise, PRDS, as Peshat, Remez, Dresh, and Soth. Okay, and I'm going to explain those in a minute. But this is much better than what we call theology, because theology was created by elder and middle-aged white males who did not speak the biblical languages. They were separated from the culture. They had to go in, so they're getting them information secondhand. What I'm about to tell y'all is coming directly from the people who lived in biblical lands. So going back, when you go into Genesis or Bereshit, and you see Yahweh saying, telling Adam to be fruitful and multiply. So if we look in the culture that I practice is from North Africa, okay, we practice North African Judaism. So we actually have access to older records outside of the 66 book canon. So when you look in there, the books of Adam and Eve, you see that Adam actually had multiple wives. Like Lilith, many of us have heard of Lilith.
Yeah.
All the goddess cults in the world come from the cult of Lilith. Okay. For example, Medusa, the Greek figure who would turn men to stone.
Mm-hmm.
That's not only a sexual figure, but that's also an archetype of Lilith. Okay. So Lilith was Adam's first wife. Eve, or Kava, was his second wife. So Lilith rebelled against Adam. So when we pick up in the biblical story, that was Eve was his second wife.
You know what? Did you ever read Prince of Samba?
What's that?
A book called Prince of Samba, because they broke down this, and
Prince of Samba book?
Prince of Samba. It's called Husband and Many Wives.
Oh no, I haven't read that yet. I've seen the book out there though. Yeah, I used to chat.
Yeah.
Yes.
One thing they talked about in that book was how after Cain and Abel, there was a long time before Seth was born. I want to say Eve was, if it was Eve that had Seth, she would have been 120 years old.
Yeah, that's about right.
And that, but the thing is we assume it was Eve, but it probably wasn't, because how could she be having babies at 120 years old? Everybody thinks that Sarah was the oldest mother in the Bible. So they kind of explained it that way. I mean, of course, it was a book that was based on just, fiction. So, but I did find it interesting that there was no sons born or mentioned from Abel to Seth, which was like a really long time.
Yeah, and we have to remember too, when it comes to genealogical records in the Bible, these were not completely comprehensive of every last, because at that time we would have been reading 500 pages worth of babies and grandbabies that were going through. So sometimes in Hebrew culture, sometimes when you're writing something down, you abbreviate something to make it concise so that the reader will get to the point, or the person who comes across the record. We have to remember, everybody didn't have access to these records. Okay, Moshe was raised in the Kemetic environment, or ancient Egyptian environment. He understood literature, science, dietetics, all of that, and he ended up writing this record of what he knew, because he had access to ancient records. But going back to being fruitful and multiplying, right? So in order to be fruitful and multiply, you can't do that with one woman. You just can't, because you're only adding if you have one woman. And mathematically speaking, you're not multiplying unless each woman that you have children with has at least 3 children, because you have to replace the husband and the wife. you actually have to replace and then go above mathematically.
Right.
There's no such thing as 2.1 children. We're talking about averages there. But when
Right.
you're actually in real time, you're producing and then you're multiplying and exponentializing, you have to have more than just you two. Because now
Right.
you just have an heir and a spare, as they say in Europe. You just have an heir and a spare if you're only going to have, say, each one's going to have 2 children. Now, what's interesting when you get into demographics, you look around the world, as of today, different societies are averaging less or more children than 2. So, for example, in all across the world, you look at all the pan-European culture. You're talking about indigenous Europe, and you're talking about European colonies such as the United States, Canada, and the rest of the Anglosphere, New Zealand, Australia, right?
Mhm.
These places, so-called, white people or pan-Europeans only having, I believe, 1.3 children right now. Population reduction. You go to across Africa, it's still, I think it's like 4.1 or 3.7, something like that. So that's why they keep multiplying. Now, when you go into the indigenous European societies of old, polygamy was always accepted there. So you saw those societies growing. For example, you go into ancient Ireland. Okay, you have something called the Brecon Laws, Brehon. There was a prince who initiated something called the Brecon Laws. He actually had a whole code book. And I'm going to give you my source in a moment. The Brecon Laws, he wrote down that when he got to the marriage customs and the rituals, he actually put polygamy in there. He regulated polygamy because, yes, sir. Every single European society on record engaged in polygamy, everyone. So when you saw Europeans, for example, engaging in chattel slavery of say, non-white peoples, we forget that they were actually subjugating their own people first because they were home. They subjugated their own people first, changed the marriage customs so that the people beneath the leadership could not rise up. Because again, you take over a people and then you don't let them exponentialize, you don't let them multiply. So that's why
Right.
now in Ireland, you don't have that law anymore. The Brecon Laws to them are dead. So I'm going to give you another example. And I want to make sure people understand this is a very popular thing. It is popular in the polygamous circle to say, well, it was Rome's fault. We have a prescriptive monogamy. But remember, there was never a movement against polygamy in Rome. It was just the leadership at that time. I pointed this out on Pete's podcast too. Just at that time, in the laws, a man could have a lover, an additional lover. But that's technically not prescriptive monogamy because they're allowed to have another lover. See?
Right. Right.
But there was never among the populace, there was never a movement against polygamy. We don't have any record of that. As a matter of fact, once you got outside the cities, polygamy was even more common. People just did it because part of that, and you were mentioning this earlier, Rob, part of that is just a natural outcome of women sensing power in a man, whether it's because he's got money, charisma, whether his sex game is good, whether he has more cattle or sheep or whatever it may be. So prescriptive monogamy, and this is on record, you never see it in history. Let me say this in the positive and the negative, in the affirmative and the negative. In world history, you never see any movements from prescriptive monogamy until about the 16th century. Because even in European Christian lands, polygamy was still practiced. And most people think that, when Jesus came, he abolished polygamy. No, he didn't. No, there's nowhere in the Bible. It's nowhere outside the Bible, even in other Jewish and Christian records. It's not there.
Right.
So again, in the world, we do not see prescriptive monogamy as a dominant force until we see the middle of the 16th century, when there were some Europeans who came here. When they came over here to conquer some of the indigenous people here. I read a record, I don't recall which people they met, but I do remember they met these people on the East Coast of the United States. In the record, they said we saw men with up to 10 women and 25 children. They actually had this on record when they got here. So, and my heritage is mostly Native American. Okay. So I've looked into some of my people's past and stuff. Most Native American tribes, most indigenous American tribes practice polygamy.
It's human nature.
See, so there was no wonder when they got here, they had to subjugate the people and then change the marriage customs. So now I've been to several Native American reservations, okay? And you see a very, very low population. And there's some of them you see more men than women. But nature creates more women. So you know that the imbalance is coming because of something. Either it's dietetics, it's the timing of conception, because that actually has a bearing on whether or not you have a boy or a girl. You conceive a boy or a girl. Yes, yes, sir. That's right. Riley's looking at me like, man, I've never heard that. But yeah, it's true. Also, you can eat certain foods in preparation for a child, and you can impact whether or not you have a boy or a girl. See, and this is what I mean by understanding sexual law. You have to understand, like, you gotta understand, like, if you want, like, for example, when I had my first two children, I said 20 years before that, so, if I ever have children, I got to have two sons, and they got to be 2 years apart first. Everybody else is just, whatever. My sons are 22 months apart. Those two sons are 22 months apart. And people, in fact, they look just alike when they were younger. But I remember I did that on purpose because I wanted my first two sons to be a certain age. I wanted to be a certain age when they came of age, and now that's occurred. So now they're adults now. But
let me ask you a question, if you don't mind.
Sure.
I want to jump in there before I forget. So when you say it was practiced up until the 16th century, yeah, I mean, I think polygamy has probably been practiced around the world predominantly for all of human history, but it wasn't legal. It was just people were doing it. They were doing
sometimes it was in law. It just depends. It just depends on where you're talking about and what people you're talking about.
Okay.
But polygamy is first a primal thing. So you're going to do that with or without the law, because biology trumps ethnicity. Biology trumps culture. Culture trumps ethnicity. Just remember that. So the law, no matter what the law says, you can have higher ups, the 1%, say whatever they want to say. You're going to do what your biology tells you to do. That's why men go to war to save their women. They'll go kill 1,000 men because you got a wife and children at home.
Right.
You see? So it's motivating. So you're going to do things just as an outcropping of your biology, but your physiology and your biological function. You have a drive to do that. See? So going back to this thing here with the nationhood, all right, you do not see any movements against polygamy until the 16th century. And that's when you have this book called Thaliptera. Thaliptera is in 3 volumes, and 2 of those volumes in particular deal with polygamy, okay, and whether or not it should be used. Now, remember, the church fathers, so-called church fathers, and these are European church fathers, because during the synods, if anyone even know churches, synod, the synods are these church councils. When they came together, they dismissed the African priests who came before them. They actually didn't invite them. So when you look at the records of who was there, they only had the European synods there, although they had access to those other guys. So you didn't get people coming in from, say, Northeast Africa, for example, saying, hey, we already practice polygamy. What are you talking about? Right. In fact, y'all practice polygamy. So the Africans who are going into, and this is just scattered records I've seen over the years, when these African leaders, these generals and et cetera, were going into Europe, they saw people practicing polygamy in Europe. So, for example, the Franks and the Gauls of Germany, they practiced polygamy. Yeah. So, and this was going all the way back. So remember, you're only going to get prescriptive monogamy in a place where you have something which is the antithesis of an oligarchy, of a theocratic oligarchy, because the theocratic oligarchy as well as instituted on Sinai Mountain. Okay, so when you saw Moses go up, and he came down, he chose leaders to lead the people while he went up on and took a sabbatical into the mountain. See, but he chose those elders, but Israel was meant originally to be a theocratic oligarchy. It wasn't meant to be a monarchy. See, so now on the extreme, you have a demonic oligarchy who now rules the planet, and it's not a theocratic oligarchy according to in our case a Yahwistic deity or Hindu, for those of you watching, or some other faith. It's not like that. It's a demonic oligarchy that is doing they want to steer the people the exact opposite of natural law. And natural law will always lead you to plurality in marriage for one man and X amount of women. And
That's a great point.
Sure.
That you said they're intentionally steering us away, because that was going to be my next question, because I definitely see why they would have given us prescriptive monogamy to control the reproduction of the people that they're trying to control, to keep, you limit on how many offspring you had. But what I wonder is, because knowing that prescriptive monogamy leads to, low marriage rates, really high divorce rates, the fatherless homes, and then they give the custody to the mother, knowing the scientific studies are all there to show that a single dad was going to do a far better job of raising a child than a mom would. Not to say a far better job. The outcomes of the child are far better than, they're not faced with all the challenges. Fatherlessness is a real problem. So they're doing this stuff. And I wondered if it was intentional, because, you look at a man that's been through a divorce or maybe a couple divorces, it beats the shit out of you from what I hear. And these guys sometimes don't have the strength to even fight anymore. So I wonder if that's a way for them to control the populace by giving them just some prescription that doesn't work.
Well, yes. So there's a book by the late Dr. Daniel Amneus. He wrote two books, actually, which are very insightful. One is called The Garbage Generation. Okay, you want to, Daniel Amneus, Amneus. He was a great scholar on this issue. He also wrote another book called The Case for Father Custody, another great book. I mean, that's a classic. Every man should have that in his arsenal. If you only have 25 books, that book should be in your library, period. I also want to point you all to one of my good brothers. His name is Yada Ben Israel. He's coming out with some work on single motherhood. And I believe Master Yada is watching this program. That I've known that man for about 15 years. He's one of the most insightful people I've ever met. And, I've seen the groundswell of his work. In fact, when you say he has a group called Say No to Single Mothers on Facebook, don't be fooled. I was there when he created it. So there's some copycats out there. That man is the most insightful when it comes to the damage that single motherhood does. In fact, Rob, I would actually suggest you get him on if you really want to get your audience hip to that. His name, I can send you his name.
Yeah, I'd love an introduction. Yeah.
Oh, I'll get you in touch with him. In fact, I spoke with him a few days ago. That's my good brother. One of my trusted comrades. He's a good man.
Is there any evidence, though, that this was intentional, that they did this? Because I could see that they would have intentionally done it for the reproduction. Did they intentionally do it to beat the shit out of the men? Because
are you talking about the family law in the West?
Yeah, like it's almost like they want lawlessness. Like why would you give the custody to the mothers, knowing that the child's going to have a bunch of challenges throughout life? Is that like, is this intentional? Is there any evidence to show that they did this, or is it just because they were, they had good intentions? They thought, mothers would do a better job, and it just didn't work out that way, or was this strategic?
So I'm gonna answer in a couple of different ways. So absolutely, and you can connect the dots in history to this. When I was coming up, I was trained in the occult. Now I know what the dark arts are. I was trained to understand what was going on in the world, and that was one of the first things that my elders taught me was the position of men within a community. Okay, and women. You go back to, in our case, biblical law, in the biblical history. You go back into Adam and Eve. We don't even have to talk about Lilith and Adam's other wives. We just stick with Adam and Eve, right? Adam and Eve was an archetype of what happens within the West family courts. Okay, you don't see this type of destruction, not to that extent, in other countries, maybe with the exception of India. Okay, India's got a lot of matriarchal vibes going on now. Mm-hmm. So Lilith is the archetype of matriarchy and matrifocality. All right. When you saw Eve rebelling against what was told to Adam by Yahweh himself, okay, this again shows you that pyramid of power. It's the creator, it's the man, and then it's his woman, and then it's the children. It's always in that order. And then that spreads out to link up with other communities or people. Then you have a clan. and then you have a bunch of clans together or a tribe, and then that tribe comes and forms a nation or community, right? If you look throughout history, there's always been a push by demonic powers to re-impress polyandry into the society, which is one woman mating with multiple men. That's the most powerful vehicle by which matriarchies take over an entire nation and culture. So by using sex, remember what I said about the spheres of power. Sex is eventually going to translate into how you follow the law or what laws you create. It's going to follow who that particular law benefits and who it harms. So if you look now, women are trying to think, well, we can just have an open relationship. I mean, they got their chest out with it. See? And it's only because men feel beat up. And this is why I tell men, you have to take care of your spirit and your body. You have to meditate. You have to pray. You have to have a spiritual life. Because if you don't, these things will beat you up, Rob. We have to constantly engage in economic warfare to avoid these traps. And we have to exercise all due speed and patience. Moment by moment, day by day, when we wake up, we have to build with our brothers. And we have to say, hey, man, look, don't blow her head off. You sometimes you got to call your man like, look, I know she's trying to take your kids. Don't do that, because your mission in life is greater than that. So a man has to determine in his own mind Rob, we discussed this off camera a few weeks ago. I said, whatever you wanted to do as a man when you were 7 years old, what did you tell people you wanted to be when you grew up? If it was ethical and legal and it was moral, then that's what you should be pursuing. And no woman, no children, no divorce, no deaths around you should impact your course of action, moving toward that goal, period, point blank, period. Nothing ever stops that. So when you go back to observing the matriarchy, now you're in a position of power to observe the matriarchy. Okay, you can see what it is these women are doing. And the women are only empowered by certain men behind the scenes.
Right.
And in order to battle against that, you yourself have to build a family. You have to take care of your spirit, your mind, your body. You have to ingest whole foods. And I don't mean going to Whole Foods Market. I mean, you have to ingest the right foods at the right time and season, because all of these things are scientific. Eating out of the creator's season causes dysfunction and disorder within the body and within your mind. So now these foods that you eat out of season will act like drugs, and it will negatively impact your mind and your spirit and body. So I'm trying to tie all this in, but with the women, if men would just say, you know what, even if you're in a courtroom, say, you know what, no, that's not going to happen today. You're not, or you say, I'm going to exercise patience. I'm going to let this ride out, because in the occult realm, okay, the only thing that stops women is three things. There's you starve them of resources to lead them back to the men who have the resources. They have to experience death, or you take all escape mechanisms away from them. So that means that this is why I mentioned before, you have to have women on contracts that are internationally binding. Because when you start talking about nationhood and tying in our alliances with our male-female alliances, these power dynamics with the civic government, you have to do it in such a way where it is well known and honored by all. Because when you get tied up, for example, in the North American system, United States system, for example, or the Australian system, or the Indian system, and it's not internationally binding, you don't have any power. You don't have any power.
Is this something that kind of replaces a marriage contract or with the government? So you do some kind of contract that's binding,
Yes.
and that protects the woman to make sure she's not going to get left out in the cold.
That's true. Yes. Yes.
Okay,
and I'm glad you said you mentioned women too, because we're not saying that women shouldn't have any rights of protection. We're not saying this is all. We actually want women to be protected, because choice is more powerful than slavery. I want everybody to remember that. Your choice is always more powerful than being enslaved, because when you have a choice, now you have a wider array of options. You can say, you know what, that's the course that I've been called to take by the Creator himself. The Almighty himself has called me to go in that direction. And that's where you can go. And now you don't have to deviate. See, and now you can actually engage in local custom, because, for example, when we see Moses, when he began to flee, when he fled into the wilderness after he killed the Kemetic man, the Egyptian, he actually left and he met Jethro. Now, Jethro, the priest king, taught him for many years. He actually took him under his wing, and he further taught him local manners and customs. And he taught him more about diplomacy. Okay. That man was prominent in that region. So if you come up under his wing, you can only do that if you're already a prominent man. So this is why I tell men to stop saying this woman with you is your girlfriend. We're grown men. We don't have girlfriends. We have wives and consorts. What are you talking about? Your consort, think about it. If all of us here watching this, and Rob, you can see the YouTube page, right? You can see it on your end, correct?
Yeah, I haven't looked at it, but I know it's streaming.
Let's say if we have 5,000 people in the room, okay? And let's say we've got 1,000 of us are skilled in a particular area, and we form a consortium to help all 5,000 of us, okay? Each one of us is a consort in the consortium. But when we're talking about alliances with women, they're our consort. Because that's why I said you only choose women who are already aligned. Like, stop trying to like pigeonhole women into what you're trying to do. Just get women who are naturally like you are. That's all you have to do. Men have to get out of that thing. Like, man, I've been talking to her about polygamy. And It's like, first of all, as a polygamous man, you are a man first about your business. And in your travels and in your life's journey, you will possibly pick up another woman. You got to start thinking like that. That way you don't have to convince anybody of anything.
Right.
They're going to come to you. Why do you think millions of people apply to Apple every year? That's because Apple is already on top in several fields. They're already on top. They're just going to go apply to them. They already know what Apple is about. They're not going to go to the job interview arguing with the HR department because they know what they're about. Hopefully y'all see the analogy, right? If I want to go make computers with IBM, I know what IBM is about, international business machines. I know what they're about. If I got my master's in cybersecurity and I go apply, I already know what they're about. All I want to know is, what are my work hours? What are my job duties? How much money are you going to give me? Oh, that's not enough. And that goes into negotiation. This is also why when you go meet a woman's family, you're actually in a business negotiation. I want men to stop thinking like you can just roll up because, you think you got the best sex game or the biggest private parts, you got the most money, you got charisma. So what? If the family is smart, they don't care. They're going to say, okay, wait a minute. So that's when they start asking all these personal questions. When you go into a woman's home where her family is at to meet them and vice versa, because traditionally in all traditional societies, both the man's family and the woman's family are supposed to come together and meet, right? When they do that, you are literally engaging in nationhood because that's the same thing that every nation on the planet does. There are over 200 countries. That's every country engages in diplomacy, every single one. They have whole departments that they set aside billions of dollars for. Billions of dollars. What am I saying? That means, yes, you got to have some money. And now I encourage all men, if you're a painter, you be the best painter on the planet. We should know who you are because you're the best at what you do in that particular niche. If you're in cybersecurity, if you're an NBA player, you play in the Euro leagues, whatever it is that you choose, wherever your life path has taken you, whatever path you have chosen, you need to be dope at it. Right. You need to be sharp at where if I call you Rob, I say, Rob, didn't you say you got, aren't you a CPA? Say, yeah, man, I've been doing this for. Oh, okay, cool. See, now there's a brotherhood starting to form. And when you do my taxes 4 years straight and you save me tax, now I'm only paying 3% tax. Oh, I'm calling Rob. Then when I call one of my other brothers who you don't know, I say, hey, man, you got to call Rob Kowalski, man. This dude saved me 25%. I was paying 30% on my taxes. So that's another thing. You should never become a polygamist unless you have a brotherhood. You shouldn't even think about getting a second woman unless you have a brotherhood. There's men I can call right now. If war broke out right now, I will go to war with those guys. I wouldn't even bat an eyelash. As long as I can reach them, it doesn't matter.
Why is that so important? What you just said?
Because that's the vehicle by which you form clans and tribes and communities and nations. You can't get it without the men coming together. You just can't do it. I'll give you an example, and I'm gonna say that phrase a lot because I have a lot of examples. I was doing some research at University of California, Davis. Okay, I was out there for, I think this is when I was writing the book, and I was getting the manuscript together also for Polygamy Economic Warfare. I was out there doing some research. I was out there for like 2 months, and I met a young woman whose mother her mother was white American, her father was Nigerian. And I remember her telling me that she spent a lot of time with her father. Like even when they were together most of her upbringing, but when they split, she still went with her father to Nigeria. So she said, one day she was confused because she was like, why are all these men sitting like just it looked she said, this is what she told me. She said, I thought these men were lazy at first. Why are they just standing on the street corner? Like just talking. She said, what? Oh, so these Nigerians are lazy. This is what she told me. She started laughing. She said, well, actually, so Hondo, look, come to find out, those men, when they get together on those corners, they're actually talking business and how to make money. She said her father had to school her. He said in Africa, men don't just sit around like that. That's you'll be ousted from your family like that. And those of you who are African who are watching this program, you know what I'm talking about. They can hopefully verify this. I can't see the YouTube chat, but they can verify. She said that her father schooled her, but also she ended up someone said they can verify that. So so she said that sometimes she'll be passing, walking down the street. African towns and cities are very hustle and bustle. She said she would listen to the men and they will be talking about, oh, you know what? Hey, all 10 of us, we got to remember that plaza we were going to buy. Yeah. Why don't we go to my house and eat dinner? And then we're going to, tomorrow morning, we're all going to meet at the plaza and go buy that plaza and go find an owner. You see, she told me she was hearing this, and then her father was telling her, like, yeah, this is what happens here. So these men are forming consortia. And when you don't do that, and I heard this with my own 2 ears, I've heard men say, man, I don't got to follow nobody, man. It's just me, find me. You need to stop that. You ain't going to make it.
Right.
You're not going to make it. Even I got elders I can go to. Most of the men that I run with are older than me. And they had to school me back in the day. For example, I didn't care too much about money. I just want to sit under a coconut tree in Thailand and write books. And that's fine and dandy. But I need the money to get to Thailand. And I need to stay there for at least 6 months. I need the money to do that, right? It helps to have money if I'm going to get 3 fine Thai women. Thai women are gorgeous, by the way. It helps for me to have some money. So if I'm going to do that, I need to have money saved. I need to have money coming in from several sources. And it helps if you have a healthy respect for finances, which are not necessarily fiat currency. That's just another vehicle of sale. Every man should have gold and silver and maybe some palladium, even if it's a little bit, because that's real money. See,
Right.
And what I'm saying, Ryan, your question just opened me up a little bit because now I'm going back into when I was being trained, and I was actually early on when I was just dating. I guess I have several girlfriends. I didn't have no money, but they liked me, and I was like, "Dang, why these girls like?" Because I'm thinking about money. Money does not make a man. That's actually true. Because when you don't have money, if those women still want to be down with you because they know you need money and you know you need money, but anything can happen.
Right.
But I also find it ironic because I know you really stick it to the people who are prescriptive monogamous. So I'm gonna go back to this point. When you experience economic upheavals, most polygamous families actually still not only keep their incomes, but their economies grow during economic upheavals. You literally have to uproot them by force before they lose everything.
Wow.
I know a lot of polygamous families around the world and in the US. Nobody lost anything. My income, I believe my income went up 250% during the pandemic.
Is that because everybody just works together so much better than? Because I've often said, like, I didn't want to ever have kids until I could have a live-in nanny. This was prior to discovering polygyny, just because I was like, I never want to not be able to go on a date with my wife or have sex with her or whatever. Like, so I always often thought I would want to have a live-in. I would want to have enough money that I could afford to live in nanny. Now that I've discovered polygyny, I'm not going to have any kids until I have 2 wives, because then we can share the load. But is that because everybody just works together that much better? And let me ask you that question, and then follow it up with this. A friend of mine told me that he lives in Thailand, and he said it's the norm over there.
Yes.
And he said that what he noticed was anytime this was introduced into a previously monogamous relationship, he said it was met with immediate hatred by the first wife, followed by an overwhelming attraction to the said male from the wife, the first wife. Now she like first she hates him, then she wants to sleep with him, and then an inability to let go. Like she
Yeah.
can't leave him. And I
Yes.
wondered if there was truth in that.
Yeah. So whenever you're engaging in any of these spheres of power, okay, these power dynamics that I mentioned in the initial minutes of the conversation here, whenever you gain momentum, you're going to start attracting things to you and people to you. It's just going to happen, whether it's money, whether it's a better job, better position, whether it's your intelligence actually increases.
Mm.
Person and individuals. There's another reason going back to brotherhood. This is why you need a brotherhood. And I've noticed this in my own brotherhood. Collective intelligence has jumped because we're always trading information on a daily basis. It's almost like watching the stocks go up and down daily and minute by
Yeah.
minute.
Yeah.
That your intelligence should always increase until the day you die. See? So, and I want to tell a quick story, but since we're talking about, wealth development, things like that,
Mhm.
specifically in
Sure,
regard to when I was a caddy, and this happened I believe this was the spring of 2015. I caddied for one of the Rothschilds. Now, if any of you know who the Rothschilds are, they're the richest European family on the planet. They have trillions of dollars. Okay, trillions. Okay, Bill Gates is broke to them. They got money. Okay. I've also met John Rockefeller III too. I met him while I was caddying one day. He was chilling talking about University of Chicago. He's the type of people I'm always talking with them about stuff. So, when you're a caddy, especially when you're older, people are like, well, what else do you do aside from caddy? So I'm telling him like, I'm an author. He said, well, what books you write? So I wrote a book called The Polygamous Papers. He said, huh, that's interesting. What's that about? So he told me what he does. So, and I forgot what he does, but I know what that particular Rothschild does for a living. Okay. But anyway, he said, really? So this book is about the economics of polygamy. He said, tell me more. So we're going up to the seventh green. He had just hit a shot in the rough. So we're approaching the green. I gave him this sand wedge, and I wanted to test him because before I went out on this round, one of the caddies who was probably 10 years, 12 years younger than me, he was like in the mid-20s or something like that, named Mike. Mike said, hey man, you know who that is, don't you? I was like, well, it's got to be one of the Rothschilds because that's the only family in the world who has that name because that's a created name. That's
Really?
that's not an ancient name.
Hmm.
That name was created by Amstel Rothschild. That was not their original family name.
Hmm.
Okay. So at any rate, so we're walking up to the seventh green, and I was telling him at that time before he hit the approach shot, I said, well, you know, specifically European families, but all of the world's wealthiest families, the top 1%, they engage in polygamy. And those of you who are listening and watching this, you know how you watch these movies, even some anime, and you see this huge mantle and fireplace, and you see this, it's either going to be a painting or a photograph of the patriarch and matriarch of the family. Y'all have seen this, right? Well, I pointed out to him, I said, well, that's just his public wife.
Right.
He's got mistresses that he has children with, and he builds trust funds for them. He gets with his attorney, he builds trust funds, then he spreads them out. That's what Amstel Rothschild did. When he sent his sons out across Europe, they already had money going out. And then they took over the banking institutions. Now, I want to make sure everybody is clear on my thoughts on it. Of course, we know that certain elite families are demonic and what have you, but I'm only talking about the operation of this thing. We're supposed to do that too.
Sure.
We're supposed to have trust funds for our children, even if we had it with a woman and we want to keep her secret. I'm gonna get into that too. See, I got all this stuff in my book about children who are hidden on purpose. Sometime when you're a man who travels, you're supposed to have that. Well, anyway, he looks at me, he's rubbing his chin. It's one of the Rothschilds. He looks at me, he says, Hondo, everything you said last 2.5 hours is absolutely correct about how wealthy families operate in polygamy. He said, wealthy families do practice polygamy, and the wealthiest families do practice polygamy. He said, I've never seen anybody teach that like you. He said, outside of these circles, you're the only person I know who knows that. He said, I want to know the name of your book. Tell me how to get it. He bought my book. He then gave me the name of his son. And I think I've seen his son on like a magazine before, like some outdoor magazine. I'm like, I think there's a son. He said, yeah. He said, you should make a documentary with my son. He said, my son's a documentarian. You should, here's my son's email address. He gave me his son's email address, and I sent his son an email. I didn't get in contact with him, but he came back and saw me a couple weeks later. He said, hey, did my son reach you? I said, no, I haven't heard from him. He said, I'm gonna get on his tail about that. He said, I told him to contact you because y'all should make a documentary. He said, that's what I told him. He said, everything you said today, because we went through the rest of the rounds. Well, we went through the rest of the round, right? And he said, I want you to keep doing that work. He said, because everything you said is exact and true. He said, don't ever stop that. He said, that's some of the powerful information that people need. Now, one of the Rothschilds. So I saw him about maybe a month later, and he had 2 groups of 5. His first group had teed off. He was supposed to show up in the second group. And I was caddying for him again. And he walks up and he says, hey, Hondo, he said, how's the publishing business going? I said, oh, it's good, it's good. I said, but some of the golfers here, they don't like me talking about it. Some of the guys in the first tee, the starters booth, they don't like me talking about polygamy. It's pretty controversial to them. He said, he glared over at the starters booth. He said, if they got a problem with it, tell them to come to me. He said, I'll solve that problem. Don't worry about it. See, so these are the type of people I talk with celebrities all the time. One of the guys that supports my work is actually, he was a news anchor. I remember this guy when I was in college. I'd actually seen him 20 years before I met him. I was like, wait, weren't you a news anchor in Atlanta? Like in 96 to like 2000? He said, yeah. I said, I remember you, because he invited me out to meet with me and talk about my book. So this guy was Charlotte, Savannah, I think Chicago, Charlotte, Savannah, and Atlanta. I think he was a news anchor in. So, people behind the scenes are seeing how this works. And that man himself, he's 60 years old. That man's still pulling bad women. I've seen someone when he talks. I'm like, oh, and he's been married for 35 years. You see, so polygamy for a man who's robust, you've got charisma. Yeah. You don't have to have a lot of money, but your money has to be consistent, and it has to be coming from different sources. That's the key, because you can always make money. Pardon me. For example, if you have 4 women, let's say you're living in, you live in Thailand. Okay. All your women should have tasks based on 2 things. One is what she's good at and what she likes to do. Don't ever make her engage in a profession that she doesn't like and she's not good at, unless she's going to get trained in it. And then you take it from there. So always remember too, the more your wife works outside the home, the greater the chance of rebellion. You want to have your woman sort of when you literally want to engage in home economics, literally. Yeah. Okay. So that's just some that's
good. So I've been trying to think of this from all angles ever since I discovered the information, and try to break it down for people that don't understand it in ways that maybe they can understand. You said more people are starting to see it. If you think of it, I don't know, this is just kind of like a theory I have, where if you think about a man is driven by purpose, right? Our purpose. We're most happy when we're trying to achieve it. We're actually climbing the ladder. It's not so much when we get it. You hear stories all the time from people that, it was when they were training to be the champ, or when they were building the organization. But it's almost like they lost something. They lost some of the joy when they actually attained the mountaintop. It was just like, they cracked the code kind of thing. And I think women are more driven by relationships, not so much their vision. They're more relational. So their dream is to get married, right? So then they find the husband, and then all of a sudden, because of monogamy only, they crack the code. There's nothing left to fix anymore. There's no problem left to solve, and which is why 80 to 90% of the time they file for divorce, not the man, the woman. And I think
prescriptive monogamy allows women to control the narrative. This is one of the reasons why I encourage men who don't want to be polygamous. I know one of the panelists here said he wants monogamy. And I encourage you to, when you're forming your contract, when you're, I believe it's our brother Elijah who was saying that he's not really into polygamy. Well, what I encourage any man who thinks like that, what was that?
Not Elijah.
Elijah's very much into it.
Oh, man, I think it was somebody who came out. Like, I'm sorry.
It was George.
It was George.
Yeah.
Okay, so George, when you're forging your contract, and this is just advice. Of course, every man is sovereign. You do what you want to with your economy. It's just advice based on what I've seen over 40 years. Like when you're forging your economy and you want to be monogamous, because that's true, what I call true monogamy, because that's what you want. That's what you want. Not because your wife is badgering you about it, but because you want that. When you're engaging in monogamy, you want to forge that contract so that she will not have the opportunity to prevent you from engaging in polygamy if you ever change your mind, because you're the leader of the household. So say 10 years from now, you may say, dang, we got 5 kids. We need some help in here. So you may choose to get a nanny, or you may choose to have family members assist. Or you can say, you know what? Dang, that woman down the street just moved in. She's fine. Dang, she like kids too. It happens. I've seen it happen, and dudes be caught up in a bind. Like, man, I ain't trying to hear that Hondo about that polygamy stuff. But what you do, you always want to leave yourself an outlet for expansion if that's what you choose to do later. But if you don't do that now, what'll happen is the woman will bring it back up to your face. Like she will actually say to your face, no. You remember in September 10th, 2012, you said it was gonna be us, and then she badgered you. Now you're in trouble.
Yeah.
Now,
I think just having that on the table, that it is your right,
yes.
that whether you exercise it or not, sets you up for more success in the long term, because it does. The woman knows, number one, it subjugates her, right? She knows she's underneath you. She's not equal with you because you have the right to. And also, is she going to deny you sex? Is she going to gain a bunch of weight? Is she going to give you all this back talk? Knowing that you could go out and choose another woman, because she doesn't probably want the competition. So of course it's going to change the dynamics of the relationship, and it's going to keep her probably a little bit more interested, because women do have something called competition anxiety, where, and I just feel like because we've lost that under this prescriptive monogamy, this is why we have this super high divorce rate. It just, the bond doesn't work. The polarity isn't strong enough.
Well, one of the things too that polygyny does, and the women who may be watching, I really want y'all to hone in on this. It actually allows you as the man to treat them better, because you're not exhausted by all this energy they got coming down the pipeline. Because women take up a lot of your energy, and if you don't have a meditation practice, if you're not doing some type of, you don't have a regimen, you're in trouble. You're gonna get worn out, whether you got 1 woman or 10 women. You're gonna get worn out. But having multiple women, if you have a plan, you actually, and someone's asking, would this be draining? I know for me personally, and other polygamists that I know that are my brothers, my close brothers, we have more energy when we have more women. I'm always tired. I feel like I'm 150 years old when when I have 1 woman. I'm like, man, don't you got a fine cousin or something? Or, I'm just getting upset. I'm like, come on,
oh man,
like really, like just you? And I get frustrated and I get cranky. But I notice when I get that second woman, when I get that third woman, my income always goes up, and it's just things start happening, things start lining up, because remember, I'm already in tune with the creator. So the creator supports polygyny. So if I'm doing things and setting things up here in the earthly realm based on what he's told me I'm supposed to do, then it's going to work out. So you actually have more energy when you have multiple women who are on code. Now, if you got some women who are rebellious, yeah, you're going to get worn out. That's one of the reasons why I'm very, like, my very forceful and militant upbringing, it works, because women kind of know, like, okay, I can't mess with him like that. I've had a lot of women come to me and say, I know I don't meet your standards. I didn't even tell them, for example, that my women got to be in shape. Like, all my women got to be, if you thick, it got to be a good thick. You can't be just rolls all over the, no. Especially if you're under 40, you got to be in shape. So that's another thing. Just like I have the 2 language rule, I also have a fitness rule. Like, you should be able to put on a 30-pound backpack If we can't walk 10 kilometers, then you have a problem. Unless there's illness or injury, barring illness or injury, because these things can occur in life, right? But barring illness or injury, they have to be in shape, even if they're older, you know.
So high standards. I think the options give you the ability to have high standards. No.
Yes, Rob. I'm glad you said that phrase, high standards. Men got to stop trying to dig into the trash to get women. We don't got to do that. There are 4.5 billion women on the planet, and there are some of them who are, not naturally submissive. But when you are dominant, that woman who's normally dominant, she'll submit to you. Most of my consorts are like that. My consorts are very bullheaded, but when I come around, they're like, oh, because I'm more dominant than them. So it's actually a false narrative that we should expect all women to be naturally submissive. They're not naturally submissive. You got to bring them in line with your presence. You shouldn't even have to say, I'm dominant, I'm the man. You shouldn't even have to say that.
Right.
They come around you like, dog, I need to tighten up. If you don't have women coming to you and saying, dang, I got to tighten up, that means you're doing something wrong. That means you're doing something wrong. So it's polygamy is.
I want to open it up to some questions from the guys, if you don't mind.
Sure,
I'm sure they got a ton of questions.
Sure.
Does anybody, Riley, you want to go first?
I do. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Well, let me get I wrote down a bunch of notes and questions here. So you kept talking about consorts and wives and all that. How do you define the difference between that and like what are the qualifications, and can that position or function change in your
Yes, in the book, I actually have a chapter on something I call an elevation ceremony. So if you have a ceremony, if you want to elevate one, for example, if let's say your primary, what I call a primary consort, if they pass away or if they're incapacitated, you may have to elevate someone to, at the very least, in a title, at least in action. Like they may have to take over the duties of that particular woman. Or if you have a wife, okay, so let me. This is going to be several answers based on the culture that you practice, because I don't know exactly what culture everybody practices, so I'm just going to be very general. So let's say if you have a wife. Now technically, a wife is waif, which is a young German slave girl. Okay, technically. So I choose not. Yeah, that's what wife means. Just like husband means bondsman of the house. He's a serf, SERF. He's actually a servant to the Lord of the land.
That's true.
That's actually what he is. So that's why I don't. But in general parlance, like if I'm out in the city or something like that, I mean, I'm not with people who understand these. I'm just going, okay, I'm that woman's husband. I'm not going to argue with them. So that also goes into diplomacy again, right? So, but a wife and then a junior wife or a concubine, as we say. So there are terms. Let me go through it. So aside from the technical definition, what we're actually applying, okay, your wife is the one who's been with you. Usually she's been with you the longest. So, I know that we were talking, I was addressing Jorge and something he said earlier. If you have a wife of 10 years and then you get a woman who come in, if you live in, say, Detroit, like where I'm sitting at right now, if you're in Detroit, okay, everybody gonna be, oh man, that's your girlfriend. You know what I'm saying? But if you go among very highly cultured people and that girlfriend has been with you for 10 years, 5 years or whatever, people are gonna be like, hey man, so you got 2 wives. And you will know in real time what they're talking about. But on your documentation and in your head, I've been with this one woman for 15 years. That's my wife. You married her on paper, or you have the contract with her. You get the other one, and you may decide that she's gonna be a wife based on your standards. Now, for me, I'm only marrying virgins. Nobody's gonna be called my wife unless she's a virgin. I don't know. I run the old school way. Now, consort, if you look in European royalty, they use the term consort quite often. If you look at some of these movies talk about it. You see it. I think it was most of you may remember there was a show called Marco Polo. It came out about 5 years ago. It was a series that came out, I think, on Netflix, right? That show, in 3 of the episodes, they talk about polygamy. You actually see it. You see the selection process, you see their titles, all of that. I actually have it marked in my notes for the book. But consort means that is one who is aligned with your goals. Okay. Remember we go back to the example we made with the consortium, right? That means everybody is on the same page. We have the same goals. Like when I was young, for example, I went to Morris Brown College and I went to Georgia State University. And at the time, Morris Brown College was still a school, it was still open. They were part of what's called the Atlanta University Center, which was Morehouse College, Morehouse School of Medicine, Spelman, Clark Atlanta, Morris Brown, ITC, which is the Interdenominational Theological Center, which is 6 seminaries in one school. So these 6 schools formed the consortium of schools. They call it the consortium school, AUC consortium of schools. Every college was its own entity, which is a consort within the consortium. So when you have consorts, you have a battle plan and everybody has their role. Everybody has specialties, just like these schools did. Example, when you go to university and you look at the accreditation of the university, you say, oh, this is the Association of Southern Colleges and Schools, which is like a real accrediting body. That's a consortium. They've gotten together, they said, these are the standards we will have. These are what we will allow, these are what we will not allow. You see, so you're going to have the same thing with your women. And so what you call them ultimately is going to be up to you, what rank you put them at. You have to know what you're going to give them and you have to let them know. See, I had a woman recently, maybe 4 months ago. She brought up marriage early to me. She said, well, do you plan on, like, I'm looking to get married. And she was a bit disrespectful about it, right? So I sat her down. I looked her dead in her eyes and said, do you have marriage qualifications? She looked at me, she said, what? I said, time out. I said, because you're bragging about your culture, you're marriage minded. I said, you're not a virgin, you're not submissive, you can't cook that well. You don't like my other women just because you're jealous. I said, that's a problem right off the bat. Because you see my other women taking care of me. I mean, they take
She
good
knew you
care.
were polygynous.
What's that?
She knew you had other women.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
keep
They
going.
always know.
Keep going.
As a matter of fact, there was an older woman out when this is in 2010. I remember all the years stuff happened. So in 2010, there was a woman who was about 5 years older than me. And she grew up in a spiritual community where the leader, and he's still alive, he had, I think, 3 wives at the time, maybe 4 wives. And I never told her that I believed in polygamy. I wasn't even on that back then. I wasn't teaching on it. And she said, you're the type of guy that needs 4 wives. She said, you got too many ideas and goals and too much energy. I said, it's funny you say that because I actually believe in polygamy. So women pick up on your energy. And I've had a lot of women tell me that. They're like, man, ain't no way one woman can deal with you. Ain't no way.
I've been told that as well. That's funny.
See, so Riley, is this answering your question so far, or did I miss something?
No, that answers the question. It's kind of a idea or structure that I've been really just learning on my own because not a lot of people have talked about it. And what you said is what I found. So that answers questions there. And I actually, to add to your point earlier about the men on the street, the brotherhood talking to each other. I've lived in Tanzania and I've seen that. And at first, I didn't like understand it. I was like, why are they just standing around? Exactly what you said.
Yeah.
Because it's so different from what I experienced in America. And then and they'd come up to me and start asking me, business questions. I'm like, at first I thought they're trying to, get money out of me, but I realized it's part of this making connections and
that's a social order.
Yeah,
that's a social
you're
order.
building an economic community.
Yep. Yeah.
And so that's pretty cool. And I live more specifically with the Maasai people, and
Oh yeah, they
they've
definitely
been
practice polygamy.
they,
Polygamy.
they've been trying to marry me off, but they haven't gotten me yet.
Well, you know, those Maasai women are pretty tall. They're like 6'3", 6'4". I mean, they're pretty tall. You've seen them, so you know they're pretty tall. But yeah, it's that my work rests on primary documentation. This is why I like interacting with the audience, because a lot of people are like, yeah, like I can verify that, I can verify that. Like my work is kind of set apart from a lot of people in that. Like I don't just say like this is what we should do. Like, no, I'm like, no, you can look outside and see this. Like, you remember when those two girls were flirting with you in high school because you played football and you were the star quarterback. You remember that? And then everybody's like, yeah, I remember that. You know, all of a sudden it starts coming to them. And that's what I do with my work. I make sure that you can easily verify within minutes what I'm saying. You know, so it's funny that you said that you actually lived on the African continent and you saw exactly what the girl told me that she saw, you know, with her father and his people.
What
Oh, yeah.
percentage would, I'm sorry. I was just going
No,
to
go
ask,
for it.
one of the things I heard you mention is about like trying to figure out where your kids are, if they're more like built to be for monogamy or polygamy, you know, trying to feel them out when they're young. And
Yes.
what percentage of the population would you say are naturally, like the male population are naturally polygamous, and they don't know about it. They
Worldwide,
act, they cheat and do whatever else, or they just go out and cheat or whatever else. Sorry, go ahead.
oh no, I'm sorry. There was a slight delay, Rob. Can you repeat the last part of the question? I missed it.
Yeah, I mean, what percentage would you say are naturally that way, and they're either fighting the urges or they're acting out in degenerate ways?
I would probably say between 10 and 20%. That's my guess.
Mm-hmm.
That some men are just they get it. Like I just got it when I was younger. Like and I didn't really start dating until I think I had a girlfriend when I was 18, my senior in high school. After that, not probably till I think I was 22. No, I was 22 going on 23 because I was focused on, I just wanted to learn sciences and read the Bible and I just wanted to play basketball. That's all I wanted to do. But I remember, and then specifically, Rob, what you're pointing to is that conversation we had a few weeks ago where I said men need to not only be identified when they're young, but when we have children, we need to observe our children to see, okay, we have daughters. Is she the type that really gets along well with other girls? She knows how to pull those girls together and say, hey, let's go do. And everybody just kind of follows along with her. Those are markers of a woman who knows how to engage with a polygamous man in a plural marriage. Okay. Conversely, with boys, we have to observe them. I'm going to give you two examples within my own family. So my eldest son, I remember I had gone to Arizona to work and the mother calls me. She's like, you need to come get your son. I said, oh, now he's my son. You know how that goes. I'm like, oh, he's my son when he's acting up. What did he do? What did he do? And she said they were on the bus and he was very young. And I guess there was this beautiful, beautiful sister on the bus. And she was stacked. And even my woman said she was stacked. And my son, he said, hey, what's your name? And I said, what? I said, he did what? So that showed you, okay, I knew. So when I got back, I had to tell him, I said, look, his sexual power, I could see was already growing. I said, okay, here's what you do, son. He was very, very young. I'm talking about he wasn't really cognizant at that time what he was doing. I said, look, here's what you do. I said, when you see a woman that you like, and I taught them this when they were still children, they were still very young. I said, here's what you do. This is how you handle it. Da, 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 da. So now that they're older, I mean, they're adults now. They say, Dad, we remember you taught us these things about how to deal with the women. And we were like 5, 7 years old. I said, y'all remember those conversations? They said, yeah. And now they said, Dad, I like to have multiple women. So my youngest son, he ran into a conundrum, right? Just to show you about the identification. So again, I was traveling and he said, Dad, so we had a dance at school that came up. And this girl that I really like, she likes me. She told me she didn't want the other girls who like me to go to the dance with me. And then I think one other girl approached her and said, hey, I want you to take me to the dance, but I don't want you talking to them other girls. And my son was like, Dad, what do I do? I said, what you mean, what you do? He said, you better be glad I'm over here traveling for. I said, you need to see, if I was there, I think the event had just happened. He ended up taking one girl. But I said, I should have gotten you a limousine, a stretch limousine, and I would have told you, and then I would have gone with you to talk to all their parents. My son is taking your daughter and this other girl and this other girl and the Jones family and the Johnson family and all of them, the Turners and all of them. I would have gotten a stretch limousine and he would have took all 10 of those girls. He said it was like 10 girls who wanted to go with him because he plays football. So, he's an athlete, he's tall, whatever. So I identified my sons when they were young as polygamists. Also, my own mother identified me as a polygamist. She told me that even when I was 7, 8, she could tell that I was going to be a polygamist. She always knew that. I said, how did you know that? She said, because when I would see you go outside in the neighborhood, and when I took you to church, when I took you everywhere, said you were always attracting older, more mature women. And when you became 12, 13, she said, now this is a very personal story. This is really funny. She said one of her friends, I think my mother was probably 33, 34 at the time. She said one of her friends actually flirted with me on some old, this is some sinister, almost some sinister type stuff. I didn't know. Well, I didn't know she was thinking like that, because when I saw her, I just said hello and kept it moving. But my mother says I had to check my friend because she said, "Oh, he's so handsome. He's growing into a man now." And I started laughing, but I was like, "Yeah, I'm glad you checked that. I'm glad you checked that because that's not cool." But I was like 13 at the time, you see. And my mother pulled me aside. She said, "Look, I've always known you would have multiple women." She said, "It's always been a thing with you." She said, and that's why, she said, "I know that's in the Bible though." So my mother, my birth father, and I love my dad. My dad, in fact, I just found out from one of my cousins who lived closer to my dad. I used to see my dad all the time. My cousin lived like on the next block. He said my dad, like in that particular town, he had that town sold up. He had so many women. And he ended up getting into it with this guy who liked one of my dad's girlfriends. He actually liked him. He was mad at my dad because my dad had already got the girl, you see? So they really got into it. So my father, according to my mother's testimony, she married him, or rather he married my mother, but he still had other women. I actually have at least one sibling from one of his other women who gave me my name. See, so even from the beginning, it was like that. So I was being identified as that in the beginning. But that's very, very important. We have to watch our children, and we have to talk with them very carefully about it, because we don't want them to get the wrong idea of not only about us and about their mother, but about the other women in our family. We don't want to have them grow up angry and bitter over polygamy. We really want to have them presented with a very realistic, the good, the bad, and the ugly of being in a polygamous scenario.
Yeah.
So
Let me let some of the other guys ask questions too, if you don't mind, because I'm sure they're chomping at the bit.
Sure.
Elijah, did you want to go next?
Yeah, you mentioned earlier about something about having, if you're traveling, you might have children that you kind of hide somehow. Could you elaborate on that? I'm not sure what would.
Can you repeat that?
Yeah. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah. Okay, that's better.
All right. So yeah, you mentioned earlier about sometimes a man who travels might have children that are hidden. Could you elaborate on that? I'm not clear on what would call for that kind of a situation.
Yes. So again, this is another chapter in the book also. So when you have one of your lady lovers and you meet her on your journey, okay, or she's even part of your culture locally. Sometimes, depending on the nature of your economy, for example, if you are, let's say if you're a billionaire, okay, you want to protect your assets. Your children are also your assets. You don't want them to all be public and everybody has your last name and things like that. Because some people will hunt you. Okay, they will come after you. Now, these are things I learned when I was on a golf course from some of these guys, these wealthy guys. Sometimes these guys will give their give their child the mother's last name, but they have that trust fund form, and that's to protect them. That's to ensure that they're sort of away from the bulk of this economy where people are targeting. And that's whether you're an athlete, whether you're a politician, you might be a dignitary of some type, especially high up. I've heard of ambassadors. There's certain ambassadors in different countries who do this, and they ride around in bulletproof cars. You see what I'm saying? That type of thing. So you may want to hide your child, somewhere, I don't know, they're in like Orlando, Florida, with the woman that you were with at one point. And you make sure that woman has a trust fund so she and that child are taken care of. And at some point during the child's life cycle, there's actually attorneys like law firms that will then contact that child and the mother and say, okay, this is who your father really is, if he or she doesn't already know. And that's to protect the family. That's to protect your legacy.
Let's do a lightning round. I know you have a couple more questions that you sent me, Elijah. These probably could be pretty quick answers. One question that you said was one house for everyone, or each wife in her own house / apartment. You find one situation's better than another?
Yeah, ideally you want everybody within, and I said this in the polygamous papers, ideally you want to have everybody within walking distance. And, especially if you're in a more traditional society, if you live in a more traditional society, like, he was saying that he lived in Tanzania. You want to have the village concept. You actually want to have everybody on some acreage, where you can see everybody's homes, and things like that. So for example, the man always, and someone asked us earlier about they were asking about the energy drain and what if you're the type of man that likes to be alone a lot? Well, that's why they have the master's bedroom. It's always the largest bedroom. The women come in when he wants to have sex with them, and then they go and they have their own domicile. They have their own domicile or their own bedroom. That's why we call it the master bedroom. It's literally the master's bedroom. But the village concept allows you to monitor things more closely. It also provides for more logistical efficiency than saying your women live in another country. See, and this is what I'm setting up as the village concept, actually. So, those things take time too, because most of us, even if we have a brotherhood, we don't have the specialized roles that some people play, not only matchmaker, but you have a servant that goes out to find you a wife, in another jurisdiction. And then he acts as the ambassador and speaks for you so that you can more efficiently bring these people together, then bringing the wife to you physically. So that takes a lot. That takes a lot. But yes, ideally you want to have the village set up, or develop that as efficiently and quickly as you can.
Yeah. Hey, excuse me, Rob. I actually gotta head out. Gotta wake up early. So I did want to ask one quick question to you, Hondo. So one of the things that I really like that you were talking about was just the quality of women. And, you're probably well aware that in the United States, unless, they're there, but they're not in its vast quantities. It seems like because again, you should be dealing with high quality women, virgin if you can, no kids. That's just my standard. And so it seems like you deal with a lot of international women, because they're natural, like in Africa. I'm Dominican, by the way. So that's, they're pretty traditional there, though I think slowly but surely feminism is creeping in. So in your travels and everything that you do, do you target specific areas? Because you over here talking about, 8, 9, and 10 virgins who are young and submissive. Man, just tell me the ticket, man. I'll buy it.
Right.
I'll be over there, man.
You're already there.
Yeah. So yeah, can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, yeah. As far as that's concerned, you're talking about finding these types of women. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, obviously I'm more, I've chosen monogamy.
Mhm.
But yeah, so where would you go? Because I to the point, the way it is, and as important as marriage is, and I loved how you talked about marriage, because it's not just like, oh, I love you, let's be together. No, we're out here to fulfill a mission. And also the standard, you did make a good point where the standard of my marriage is not my wife's happiness. No, I don't believe in happy wife, happy life. It's about like,
Happy
this is
husband, happy home.
yeah, exactly. It's exactly happy home. Let's fulfill a mission because women's emotions, that can't be the litmus test to a successful marriage. And so,
Yes.
yeah, can you kind of talk about maybe a little bit about your international stuff, like where you found these sort of women? Because I don't think you're talking about American women at all, or at least that's what I'm hearing when I listen to you.
No, no, not now. Some of my brothers, they've been married for a long time, and they speak highly of their women. They speak very highly of them. But we're talking about going back 15, 20 years. If things were a little different, you had a higher chance of getting somebody like that here. And they were with them when they were teenagers, and now they're in their 30s, so they're early 20s. So I've used the dating sites before. I've used that before. I don't use them anymore. Because and that's a whole other teaching by itself. And there's a lot of science behind that. I don't use them anymore. Thankfully, two of my consorts I found that way, many moons ago. But you're sifting through a lot to get that. But the best way is it goes back to what I said about having a brotherhood. One of my brothers actually he's connected to people in East Asia and in South America where for example, I'm going through his marriage program right now. I'm actually about to go through his marriage preparation program because there's a standard that he wants to present to these families because he knows families who have daughters and nieces and female cousins who are virgins and who are ready for marriage and they're young.
What part of I'm sorry, what part of South America? I speak Spanish, so that's an advantage for me, unless it's Portuguese.
No, he primarily, if you're talking about my brother who has the marriage program, his people that he deals with, I believe, are Guyanese primarily.
Okay.
From Suriname, and I think he has somebody in Ecuador, if I'm not mistaken. He's told me a few other countries, but I know it's not every country in South America, but it's at least two of those that I know for sure. But I've known him for 16 years now. And even his wife, he's been married to his wife for, I think 25 years, and she was a virgin when he married her, and they have many children. So I'm getting tapped into a pipeline that I was in, back when I was very young. So it goes back to brotherhood. You have to know men who are about that standard that you want. You also have to be willing to take the time and the energy and utilize the money to go to where these women are at and to go through programs like that. Because when we go to, no matter how dope we think we are, when you go to these families, they're going to vet you. They're going to look at your financials. They're going to say, okay, do you have a criminal record? If so, what would they tolerate? What would they not tolerate? They'll say, well, what is your body count? How are you going to deal with my daughter? She's 21. Blah, blah, blah. They're gonna take you through the ringer, and you have
That's how it should be. I agree with that. That's how it should be. Now, unfortunately, we don't do that anymore. Like me, I am trying to go to younger women, and to me, I'm going to go to the father. I'm going to be like, hey, I'm interested in your daughter, and start that way. He'll probably be thrown back because it's like, whoa, but that's what I would want if I had daughters. So that's what I would do.
Well, when you go to these countries, I'm going to give the 4 pillars of international travel. And Rob, you and I discussed this previously a few weeks ago. And just to get down to the meat of your question, you want to go to any country where they still have at least a vestige of their traditional customs. Okay. If they don't, then you're in trouble. You don't want to go to Canada and get a woman unless she's like Inuit, what people falsely call them Eskimo, but Inuit is what they call themselves. Unless you go to the Inuit and, you go to a traditional ceremony, you go through that. If it's not that, you're just going into a land rife with vipers and crocodiles. You don't want to do that.
Like United States.
Correct. There are 4.5 billion women on the planet. And when you deal with 4.5 billion women on the planet, if they're 18 and up and single, you have access to them if you have a passport.
Absolutely.
So men have to start to fall in love with numbers again and mathematics, because this will help you understand. I'll give you an example. Some of my brothers who are so-called African American or Black American will say, I only want to deal with American Black women. Okay, so I crunched the numbers about 5 years ago. And those of you who are American Black males and you only want to deal with American Black women, I have a term that I coined called geographic endogamy. Okay, that means that those of us who live in the United States are engaging in sex with the same women. Essentially, if we're dating and marrying and divorcing, we're having sex with the same women. That's just facts. Geographic endogamy. That actually causes disease or causes mental health problems also because you're not expanding like Yahweh told you to do in the first chapter of Genesis. So when you go out here and you look at American Black women, they only comprise 0.0054% of the world's female population. That's a real stat. Okay. So you mean to tell me that you're missing the other 99.99% of women? You're missing out. And you have a passport. So if you have a passport, you need to always engage in the 4 pillars of international economics. And you can get these classical women that you're talking about. It's 3BW formula. I call it 3BW formula, 4 pillars. That's you always want to have a business that you own. You want to open a bank account in the country that every country you step foot in more than once, you should have a bank account there. You also want to buy property because that will lead you directly to citizenship in many cases, and it'll fast track your permanent residence. Then you want to have a woman, 3BW, because the woman is the link in the chain that binds you to that country because women are very informational. They'll tell you, again, my women are always trying. See, I have a system where when I'm in my woman's country, they translate for me. I don't talk when I'm in public unless I have to sign something. That's it. I give them some money at the beginning of the day when we take our trips and when we go out. I give them some money. I put it in their pocket and say, give me the change at the end of the day. And I usually let them keep it because I want my women to have some money. I don't want my women to walk around with no money. See, that's again why we need to have what? A business, a bank account, buying property, and then we have a woman. And we should never travel. We should never travel and just look for the woman first. That's passport bros. That's the only problem I got with passport bros because they all talk about how many women they're gonna bang first in Tanzania and how many women they're gonna then bang in Eritrea.
It's really degenerate. That's one of my biggest problems with the passport, bro. And I'm even a little offended because I'm Dominican. I'm very close to my country, and they're all going to DR, and it's just like I know the type of women they're taking advantage of, and it pisses me off, quite frankly.
Yes. And see, remember what I said at the beginning, Jorge? Remember I said that we're engaging in diplomacy when we travel. Even when you step outside your door, you're engaging in diplomacy. Even when Rob and I met through someone else, that's diplomacy because the other person trusted me enough to recommend me to Rob and to have me on Rob's show. And then Rob trusted me enough to have me on his show. Even that, something that simple by coming on a podcast is diplomacy. But we can go in on this all day, but I'll stop because I know there's other people with questions. But I get amped about it. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no, thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
Ross, you got anything? Conan? I think you might be muted, Conan.
Yeah, you're muted. Can't hear you.
No. Say it.
We barely hear you. Barely.
Real low.
Wait 1 second.
Oh,
There you go. There you go.
Good enough.
Okay, good. Okay, perfect. So, you answered my questions about like what if you're the type of person that needs alone time? Are you suited for polygamy, energy, etc.? One more question that I did have was, what are some benefits to raising kids in a polygamous household? Because I've always been curious about that.
The first thing I think about is security. Okay. You've got a lot of people around. You got a lot of eyeballs on you. So there's less chance for somebody, for example, to engage in physical or sexual abuse or to try to manipulate because you got a lot of eyes around you. And if you have the right, you have the right people in your circle, you can point somebody and say, hey, look, man, this, dad's third wife, son, and daughter are bugging. Okay. You actually have other people you can go to. Now I experienced this when my parents split, of course, my birth father, when they split, about a year later, she met a man, and I grew up in the Apostolic Pentecostal church. Okay. I was in that for 30 years. And he was a minister at a very prominent church we attended. They met, and he had a wife and 7 children. And I ended up, this is several years after they split. Okay. But most of my childhood, she was with this man. And I was sprinting across campus one day and she screamed my name. And I said, I didn't recognize her. It's been years since I saw her. And she remembered me. So now I'm 1,000 miles away from my home. But now I see someone that I basically grew up with. It's 2 separate homes. You see, so even that, it put in my mind, because I was 4 years older than her, so I was about to, leave the school. She just came in. But I at least had someone there who came from this union they had for most of my childhood. And that provided me with security. Also, when you go out, you can create systems even among the sons and daughters. The daughters have protection because, generally there's going to be a mix of sons and daughters and whatever
Yes.
race it would be, right? So the daughters now have the protection of the brothers. When y'all go out, the women can be chaperoned because women, I don't care how old they are. If you single, where's your dad? Where's your uncle? Where's your brother? Where's your male cousin? I don't care.
The protection.
Was that?
The protection makes sense.
It provides protection. Also, it provides a good male-female balance among the family. And you have the opportunity to build more with each other. And you have a lot more opportunity for camaraderie. And what did I say earlier? Esprit de corps, the spirit of the body. You have a much higher chance of engaging. Now, of course, that's why I call Polygamous Papers, Introduction to Polygamous Culture, and its principles, pitfalls, and ethics. So at the same time, you don't want to get involved with an evil family. But most of the time, you're not going to have that issue. Sometimes you might have a jealous wife who wants her children to be first and all that, that can be stamped out. Okay. And this is why everybody needs to be on code. Generally, children from polygamous families end up very successful because you have so many people. The only incentive you have is to make sure this thing works. Your children got to be on point. They got to get good grades. They got to become engineers and doctors and spread out. You don't want a bunch of, lackluster people in a polygamous family. Every person I know, especially the African brothers that I know came out of polygamous family, all them cats are like in the stratosphere somewhere. Even the guys here in the United States, even the guys I know here, all the children are very successful.
Good.
It also provides you with a larger in-house system in and of itself. So remember, everything breaks down from nation and culture to tribe to clan, and then within the what do you call the nuclear family unit. You now have a greater chance to build a larger government. Okay. You can also build family businesses like that. You have the opportunity to build more wealth, material and immaterial wealth. Immaterial wealth is what you got here in your heart and your spirit, right?
Right.
Material wealth, you have a greater chance of engaging in economics that way. And like if I have 12 brothers and sisters and we're ranging from like 3 to 23 years old, now my father doesn't have all the stress of helping to raise up the
kids. The kids help each other.
Yes, I had that for my older cousins. In fact, actually, one of my older cousins who helped raise me is actually downstairs. I'm actually one of my family's homes right now. You see, and he helped raise me. He's the one who actually got me into computers. You see, so having them around, I hung out with them all the time. So they range between, I believe, 12 and 25 years older than me. See?
Oh yeah.
So having that was sort of it was for me, it was a chance for me to be around older people. So you have a different range of generations. You have 2 or 3 different generations also. Because once, say that 25-year-old starts to have, or the 23-year-old starts to have children, now you have a first cousin. See?
I see.
Or nephew, I'm sorry, you have a nephew. You have nephews and nieces. You see? So now the family has a greater opportunity. You just start growing. The family just sprouting. It's like seeds in a large field. See, so these are just some of the things. I mean, I'm just fast tracking the answer, but yeah, hopefully that helped.
That does. I'm a little bit more open to the idea because I do want to have a powerful, wealthy family, and frankly, the only reason I personally can see myself being polygamous is out of duty, really. Like the fact that there's not enough men, especially in like the Black community, there's not enough men like to go around. I would probably do it out of duty. That's probably the only reason I could think about it, doing it.
That's economic warfare. That's duty. That's the military aspect. That's combat.
Deal.
And, different societies also. I'm just going to point this last thing out, Rob. A sense of duty is one major reason that you engage in polygamy. Okay, because for example, in an American Black community, for example, is very, there's a lot of issues there that need to be resolved. Now, some of them, if you have more righteous men getting with women who are cooperative, you can have more children. I even
Yes.
read, go ahead.
Oh no, you were saying?
Yeah, so there was this book I read about 10 years ago. It was by a white gentleman back in the 19th century. I think it was around 1895. This is, of course, the industrial age was really at its peak, the Gilded Age, as they call it, right? And I remember him saying this, and his burden, of course, was for white men worldwide, pan-European men, right? He said in his book, he said, at the time, all this debauchery was popping up, within the Anglosphere. All this
Yeah.
debauchery. Women were starting to wear pants, starting to smoke. They had the long cigarette and all that. Vacuum cleaners are out, refrigerators, ice boxes. So he says our race is dwindling in quality because of the Industrial Revolution. I mean, he started going in. And I was surprised at a book at the time. I was early in my studies. I was surprised he wrote this book, but I understood what he was coming from. You have a right as a man to have a concern for your own culture, your ethnicity, or your race. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, that's who you know. And
Right.
you have a right to have that concern if indeed there are moral and ethical issues popping up in your particular society. So I thought that was an interesting read by this man. I mean, it was like a 200-page book. I forgot the name of it, or else I'd give it, Rob, but that's all I got for that one. So hopefully that helps.
Yeah. No, it's good. Ross, you have anything?
Yeah, I just had a quick question. So you were talking about, when you're if you're planning on being monogamous, but keeping that door open to polygamy, would you recommend approaching that differently, or would you essentially just approach it just like you would, seeking a polygamous arrangement?
Oh, what do you mean by that? Like,
So you were talking about like drafting up that initial contract with, your first wife and leaving that door open to taking on a second or a third wife. So is there anything different that you would approach that, with that in mind, or?
You mean as far as like the wording of the contract, or
how you bring it up to the woman? I think he's asking.
Yeah, really just initially carrying it on from there.
I see. Well, the conversation and your verbiage are essentially going to be the same, because, you can just, with the caveat, if a woman is saying, I can't believe these men are just got all these women, they just, and you can just tell her, well, like, you know what, I prefer monogamy. But, in the future, I may decide to expand my family. And if you give me, 3 children, you max out. If she's tapping out, like, okay, I can't, or because of injury or illness, she can't have any more, or you just want more children. You want 5 more. She ain't gonna give you 5 more. She's giving you 3. She's giving you 3. Then you have to tell her, like, well, if I want to expand my economy and my legacy through children, that's what I would do. And really, Ross, you just leave it like that, because men have to stop explaining everything. When I say everything to women, I don't mean like hiding things. I mean, there's certain details that the founder and CEO of a company know that the male guy doesn't know. Right? He knows things that the COO doesn't know, and they're the second in command. It's just facts. And that's just how the world works. In the military, that's the way it works. The general, the admiral knows things the vice admiral doesn't know. It's just the way it is. He has
you got to be walking in your masculine in order to pull this off. That's what it comes down to.
Absolutely. So, that absolutely, Rob. So like, that's the way you have to approach it. You have to let her know, like, in the future, I may decide to expand my family beyond the borders of our alliance. And when you put it to her like that, you can definitely see that's a good test. That's a good early test of whether or not she's really on board, because this is important, fellas. A woman, if she really cares about you, even if she doesn't necessarily love you romantically, if she's down for you, though, she will want you to expand and become as big as possible. And that is the test I run on every woman that comes across my way. I'm like, oh, so you just want to be my only woman and you only want to have 2 children? So but I want 10 children. What if I want 100? What am I going to do? You can adopt. I had a woman tell me you can adopt. I said, but they're not of my blood. I said, there's nothing wrong with adoption. We see that all throughout the Bible. We see adoption all throughout the Bible. We see it in real time here. It's a very noble thing to adopt someone, but to rely on the larger percentage of my economy to be adopted, I don't necessarily have to do that. I don't have to rely on that. See, so that's what I would do, bros. I'm very direct with these women. I don't mince any words with them. So it tends to work. It tends to work more often than not. They appreciate your honesty, even if they can't like kick it with you like that. They gotta respect that. But I tell them that usually the first or second conversation that I meet them.
Right. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
There's a good time to mention, actually, I have a 10-step guide I put together that answers this question. It's the technique that we're using in my coaching program for how to bring this up with women in a very frictionless way. So if anybody wants that, drop the comment guide and I'll go back through tomorrow and I'll reach out to you and send it to you. If you're on YouTube, actually, the comments may disappear. Email me, rob@robbkowalski.com. And I'll reply to it with the guide.
Oh, Rob, also, I encourage everybody to go to Amazon.com
Yeah.
and purchase the Polygamous papers.
Yes.
Please. Now, you'll see a black and white version there. The version that Rob is holding up here, that's the version you want to look at. That's the one with over 100 reviews. It's rated 4.6 out of 5 stars. The ratings are actually higher than that, but they use like some weird algorithm. It takes your ratings down. So it's kind of weird, like that. But nevertheless, please purchase that book. I also have a program coming up where I will be teaching men how to engage in it. And it's going to be, of course, this is a Q&A session, but it's going to be more, more formal. It's going to be a written form, and you're going to end up having access to 2 consultations per month, 2-hour consultations per month. So if you pay for the monthly membership, it's going to be all of that. It's tight. I've been working on it for years. And so if guys want to know like the daily, like, okay, what do I do from the time how much money do I need? Do I need to set up? I'm going to be giving you names, dates, places to go to, how to make that money, how to recover your assets also, like not recover your assets, but how to recover your economy. If you've been homeless before, or if you lost everything in a divorce, I'll show you ways to get back on your feet because I've been there before. Like I've lost everything about a dozen times before, and I picked back up just fine. And I also show men how to get through economic upheavals. This is, again, why you need a brotherhood. If I didn't have a brotherhood, I would have been out here somewhere. So definitely just watch out for that program, though. And the next book will come out in winter of this year. And I also have another book coming early next year on traveling properly, like culturally correct travel. Okay. And that's when I really go in on some of the stuff that we talked about, because right now men are just all over the place and just, they just slinging sex everywhere. And they think that's traveling. It's like, no,
Right.
you're a tourist. You're not a traveler. There's a difference.
I think the biggest takeaway I got from this is how strategic you treat this. It's like almost like a military unit, very orderly.
Yes. Yes.
It really
You-
got me thinking more about that.
And you know what, Rob? Oh, I'm sorry, Rob. I can barely hear you.
No, go ahead. Go ahead. Say what
Oh.
you're saying.
I was just saying, yes, we have to treat householding like a business. We have to treat it like a business. And I'll give you an example in a moment of even an elder Filipino man who told me this. If you don't treat it like a military, like it's law codes, like it's a social setting, like it's a high society social setting, if you don't treat it like you're engaging in full scale international commerce, you're going to falter because you will rely on the need to save the wrong women. You will rely on the need to be some Superman and flying in. You will also avoid, by treating it in a technical fashion, you also avoid the temptation to just grab at women. Yeah, man, I'm a polygamist now. I got 4 women. Da, da, da. Okay, but you smashing 4 women, but they not cooperating. They ain't making you no money. They ain't saving your time. They ain't giving you no children. They ain't signing a contract, nothing. And if you don't have that, what it does, it shows women at large that we're just a bunch of clowns, because that's the way they acting toward most of us now anyway. They're like, man, y'all some, man, whatever. Y'all talking about polygamy, where your money at? Not that they need to be in our pockets. I had a woman do that recently, and I just told her I don't want to talk to her anymore because she wanted me to. She said she called me stingy and tight-fisted. I said, no, you just don't deserve to be treated like a queen when you don't have queen qualifications. See, I can't go apply to again. I can't go to apply to Apple and be the head of a department if I don't have a bachelor's degree and if I don't have any certifications, I haven't trained, I don't have the qualifications. And we need to get back to that. We as men need to be qualified, and we need to be open ourselves up to these things, these principles, so that we naturally want to treat our women well. I don't want the ladies watching thinking this is all gloom and doom. It's not. But that at the outset, we need to have structure and order. You need to have structure and order. If you have no structure built properly, everything falls apart. I've experienced that when I didn't build properly, everything fell apart. And I recall distinctly where it wasn't even the women didn't want polygamy. That was not the problem. It was the fact that I did not have structure set up and I was broke at the time. You can't be broke and engaged in polygamy, or else you're just some dusty dude sitting on somebody's couch and you smashing a bunch of women from time to time in their house. We don't want to do that. We want to have our stuff in order, because women will sniff that. I think, Rob, was that you who mentioned that earlier, that women pick up on that? Was that
Yeah.
Rob?
That was based off of something I heard you say in one of the episodes I was watching that you put out.
Yeah. So it's very important that daily we're on top of this. And that's something I didn't take seriously. I just want to tell a quick story real quick. So when I was in the Philippines, there was a young lady I've been talking to for a couple of months. And I didn't tell her that I was a polygamist. This is about 7 years ago. I didn't tell her because our conversation was super short. And she was always rushing away to go. She was a school teacher, virgin. She was 23 years old. And I said, I'll tell her when I get there, because I knew I was going to meet her family. Now, her father had passed away a year before, but she said, do you mind if my father's best friend meets me, you, my mom? And she brought her cousin, who was like 11 or something like that, with her. So we were supposed to meet at my hotel at the bottom near the lobby in this meeting room, but they had closed it. So I said, well, can they come up to the room and we meet up there? And hotel, front desk said, sure. So we get up there. We had a 3.5-hour parlay. Now, I'm telling y'all right now, if you're not willing to spend time and energy just in the getting to know the woman and her family phase, don't do this at all. Don't even think about it. These men, again, men who think they're traveling and they smashing all these women, you don't even know their family, you can get smoked out there. Because I know in the Philippines, a lot of these families, they don't like you messing with their women. And like the brother Jorge was saying, he doesn't like that. You come out there messing with his women, he feels a certain way about that, as he should, and he will react in a particular way. Well, anyway, at the end of the discussion, and in the meeting, I recall Elder Jaime. Jaime was his name, and he was a 70-year-old man. And he was in the stead. Now, remember what we're talking about. We're engaging in diplomacy. He was in the stead of his best friend, who was this girl's father. Okay. He said, you know what? I think the meeting is over now. He said, because the girl was like, oh, I can't believe you're a polygamist? Oh my gosh, she was clutching her pearls, and her mom didn't speak English. So she translated for her mom. And her mom was very still, but her mom was very calm, serene, very feminine. Her mom, I think, was about 68, 70 years old. But she said, and she thought about it. Elder Jaime says, it seemed like you run your household like a business. He said, I'm a businessman. I've been a businessman for over 50 years. He said, I like that. He said, I was surprised when you said that. He said, but you sat here and you detailed the entire history of the Philippines for the last 1,000 years. You named names, dates, places. He said, you understand our customs and our manners. He said, you even speak a little bit of one of our languages. He said, that's amazing. He said, I'll tell you what, I have no problems with you. If you want to take my friend's daughter, he said, I'll support that. He said, I'm going to leave it up to her, though. He said, but we're good. And because that shows us another lesson here. Don't ever go to someone's home and you don't understand the manners and customs of that home, even if they're from your race, ethnicity, or culture. Don't assume anything. Make sure you familiarize yourself with who you're going to get. Okay. Yeah. That will make a difference, especially with the men in the family. Okay. But imagine if I had gone there as some ignorant foreigner. So I'm just going there with an erection and some time on my hands and some cash in my pocket. I wouldn't have made it through that halfway through that meeting.
Let me ask you this though.
Sure.
So you're bringing that up with the family. You're bringing it up because I asked Pastor Dow this question, this exact
Mhm.
question, and I
Mhm.
said, you know, because he basically said, you know, told him I was talking to this girl in the Netherlands, and have you talked to her family yet? Her father, he said, and I said, no, not yet. And I was like, I'm not really looking forward to that conversation because of the polygyny thing.
Mhm.
And he's like, basically said, you know, you don't need to bring that up because you're not even sure if you're going to do it. And he's right. I'm not 100%. I do think it's likely, but I'm not 100%. And then once she's
I bring it
married,
up to the woman or the family.
the father.
Okay. Mhm.
Now, of course, I'm putting out content, so there's a good chance they're going to look me up on Instagram anyway and find me. But what are your thoughts on that? Because that's probably a question that some of the guys have. If they're going to go to this woman's parents, do they need to tell the father, hey, by the way, I may be interested in polygyny at some point? Because once she's yours, then she's yours, and it's up to you and her. Well, it's up to you, and she, you know, you've told her up front that this might be what you do. At that point, the parents have no say. So, what are your thoughts there?
Well, you make a great point. It is your decision whether you remain as a true monogamist or a polygamist. However, remember, we're diplomats. When you decide that you want to get a woman, you are now engaged, you are an ambassador for your own system. And that, pardon me, when you're going into potentially build not only a household, but a clan, uniting with other households, patriarchal households, and then you become a tribe with other clans. You don't want something like that that's so out in the open to be a secret. I'll give you an example. Let's say, Rob, and you said this woman is Danish. Is that what you?
Yes.
Or Nordic?
Yep. No, she's Danish, Dutch.
She's Dutch. Okay.
Yeah.
So let's say you have a current woman, you have the Dutch woman, right? And let's say you're in her land, okay, and you out with both of them. And let's say her cousin, who you met, you played basketball with the brother, you know, everything. Y'all were building heavy, you know, you trying to build this brotherhood with him, right? And he sees with these two women, he's gonna be like, "Hey man, what's up, man? Oh, this must be, you know, a friend of my cousin's." And then now you got some explaining to do. Do you really want to be standing next to the organic apples and have this conversation with her brother or her cousin? Do you really want to have it?
No, I mean, I prefer not to. So you're saying that you would not marry into a family if the family didn't, they would have to know about it and they would have to support it. Is that what you're saying?
Oh, absolutely. All my counselors' families know. No, I don't hide that, because then they're gonna see you as less of a man. It's like, well, because see, once they get blood in the water, they like, oh, this dude, he don't know who he is.
Right.
He didn't want to tell us. And then they just consider you somebody who doesn't want to be forthright about something which was so grandiose. I mean, polygamy, like you walk around with 2, 3, 4, 5 women. That's a big thing. So the reason that I disagree with hiding that information is because you don't want to have that conversation at the flea market.
Are you bringing that up with the family in the same way that you bring it up with your women? Is it just a matter of, hey, this is what I believe, and you stand in it, or do you explain it, or?
No, I never. Oh, I'm glad you asked that, Rob. I'm glad you asked that. So I never use the word believe, because most people believe, they think that belief means it's some concept way over there somewhere. It's in the darkness, and we don't touch that. We believe it, but we don't really touch that, do that. No. I tell them, well, yeah, I have another woman. I've actually straight up told parents that when they said, remember I said in the beginning, man, my age, they're like, why are you single? Because people who are indigenous, they don't think you should be single, being in your 40s and 50s. They're like, why you walk around here with no woman? You know what I'm saying? Like, that's how they think. Said, why are you single? I said, well, I'm not single. I've straight up told a father that before. He's like, see, woman, why you been single this long? You divorced? Da-da-da. I'm like, well, I didn't say I was single. And they're like, you know. But because they also know, and one trait that I watch for in families, and guys, always watch the family closer than you watch the woman. Because if they understand their own tribe, their own society, their own culture, their traditional culture and customs, I look for that. If they understand that, now I don't have to explain. You already know that. When I'm in the Philippines, these people know. They know. They all know. Like they're like, oh yeah, yeah. Also you're Muslim. Because see, the Muslims in the Philippines, they cut a contract with the government after all this fighting. This is about 25 years ago. They cut a contract with them so that you can legally marry in the Philippines under a polygamous system if you marry under Sharia law. A lot of people don't know that.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's a thing where you have to have your chest out because I'm a grown man. I never approach a family in fear because then they're going to see me as a little boy. And I'm not disrespectful ever. I'm always fully respectful, especially if I'm in their neighborhood, I'm in their home. You know, this is what it is. And every family has always been surprised by how I conduct my affairs when I'm at their house. They're like, wow, so wait, you're not like those other foreigners who come to the Philippines. Wait a minute. You mean you didn't come here just to have sex with my daughter? Nope. No. They're like, huh. And see, that makes them not care. A lot of times they're like, oh, yeah, you can have my daughter because you're respectful. See, so just like in the example I gave Elder Jaime, what he said, I went in there, I was armed with knowledge about their cultures and customs, about their culture and customs. One of my friends there is a Datu, meaning he's a VIP there. You know, he's a tribal chief there, right? And he told me straight up, no uncertain terms. He said, no. He said, Filipinos, we are traditionally polygamous people. He said, we had some polyandry here. You know, he said, but dominant, especially if you were a warrior, you were a chief, etc., you were wealthy, you had multiple wives. He said, brother, in fact, he said, when you come back, I'm gonna introduce you to my tribe. Now watch this, watch diplomacy. He said, when you come back, he said, because I've been watching your work online for years, your videos, and watching your Facebook page, and he wears all the traditional tribal gear. He does not wear any Western gear at all. He said, when you come back, I'm going to introduce you to my tribe. You can have anything you want to here. He said, if you want to know our language, I'll teach you our tribal language. If you want to know our dietetic system, our spiritual system, I'll teach you that. He said, we have single women here. He said, I know you got 2 wives here in the Philippines. He said, we'll get you another wife if you want to. See? All because I did what? I practiced the 4 pillars in the 3BW formula. I did not go there with my penis out and just say, hey, I just want to look at all the girls. That's what most of these guys are doing when they go there. So nobody takes them seriously. And they don't get that. You literally won't get what you want to. Remember, and I think, you know, you're running a Christian platform. So you have to act as a holy man when you travel. You can't just be out here just saying and doing whatever comes. No. Delayed gratification wins the day when you're engaging in diplomacy and family building, and when you're engaging in alliance building with these, especially with the women.
Yeah.
So
I'd love it, dude. You're a great representative for the movement, for real.
I appreciate it.
Let's do this. Let's have each guy, if you feel like if there's a takeaway, something that you stuck with you that you benefited from, go ahead and tell Hondo, and then we'll go ahead and wrap it up.
I realized that you have a really solid handle on the nuts and bolts practical strategy of running a polygamous household. So I'm definitely going to be getting your book to learn more about that.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
I took a couple of pages of notes here, but probably the biggest takeaway is just you know, reframing the whole thing as like a business arrangement or an alliance, kind of running a almost like your own structure or country.
Yes. Your household is a government. Treat it like a government, always.
Conan or Riley, are you guys still here?
Yeah, I would say my
We lost your sound, Conan.
No sound.
No, a little closer. Yeah, real low for some reason. It worked for a second and it changed. I don't know what's going on. Yeah.
Okay. So I would say my biggest takeaway, and I'm still trying to wrap my mind around this, is the fact that having more wives can lead to you having more energy. I'm still trying to understand how that works.
When you experience it for the first time, you'll completely understand.
Okay, deal.
You will completely understand. It sounds weird. It sounds very weird, but it's again, it's an occult principle. You have to have things that complement each other that look different, but they fit like lock and key. So especially when you're a man with a lot of energy. And remember also, I don't know how I missed this, everybody, but like when a woman is on her cycle, which can last until she's in her 50s, if she's healthy, it will last until she's in her 50s, she can be fertile. If she's down for a week, in the Bible, at her onset, that's a couple of days. Then she bleeds for about 2 to 3 days. Then her offset is 2 days. That's a week. You're not supposed to be kissing her, having her
You're right.
cook for you, definitely not having sex. She
Right.
not be touching the kids and all that. She's
Right.
supposed to be served by a postmenopausal woman. That's how most traditional societies, Hebrew or not, operated. They would be outside the camp. In this case, if you live with her, live in the same home, she should have her own wing of the house or what have you. And you have to be very limited in touching her because and I know for me, I get tired when my woman's around and she's on her cycle. That's why I literally don't go around my woman. I'm like, baby, I'll talk to you on the phone. I'm just not gonna do it. And plus they fine too. So I don't want to be around and I get tempted to touch, I just don't want to do that. So, we can practice it and update the practices of the NIDA laws or the cleanliness laws, in this time that we're in. So, that's definitely, I don't know how I missed that. That's a definite reason to have two or more women, and especially in a village concept, and of course, if you live, say, in Atlanta, you can have a quadruplex and you can
Oh,
stay
yeah.
in an apartment and your two wives can stay in another one, and you can rent out the other one, or you can have a duplex, have a flat, and have one of them there and a flat next door, and then rent out the other two. It's just there's a lot of things we can do in a modern context to waylay the issue of maintaining our energy. Because I'm telling you, you get wrapped up with these women while they're on their cycle, you're gonna get drained. Even if you got one, you're gonna get drained. Okay. So also, one more thing about that. When you walk into the bathroom, your woman has, she's been cleansing herself during her cycle. Y'all know how it smells. You've seen pads and all this and that. And for the women watching, what they don't realize that scent, it does things to a man's brain. We're not supposed to be smelling that because it's toxic, because it's blood. It's just like if you're playing basketball and you get cut on your arm. And I did this before. When I walked into the house one day and my lady was there, she was making me some raw vegan meals and all this stuff one day. I was hooping. I came out, I was bleeding, and I didn't go in the kitchen. I greeted her, she gave me a kiss, whatever, and I went upstairs and I cleaned it and I bandaged up. I didn't go in the kitchen at all. So we're not picking on the women. We're saying that there's an ideological principle that we have to understand. Whenever bodily fluids leave your orifices, talking about snot, pus, blood, semen, whatever it may be, it leaves the body and it becomes toxic after a few minutes. You're not supposed to let it sit. That's why you always wash a wound. Always wash after sex. That's why, you don't spit inside the house. You spit in the grass and, let it wash out naturally. We see these things, right? So,
Yes.
but yeah, you'll understand, brother, when you get that second woman, you're going to be invigorated. Like, whoa, that Puerto Rican woman down this road, she is bad. I'm glad she came along,
I hear what you say.
So yeah, so that's it.
Okay, appreciate it.
Riley, Riley, you want to jump in there?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah. What was the biggest takeaway?
I think it definitely was the part about how, and this is very new to me, being able to predict a boy or a girl based on the time of year or whatever. That's very interesting. But also this is something we didn't end up having time to talk more about, but I'm very curious to learn, is the contract side of the marriage and trust and trust funds and how that's set up. a big question that I've thought of is, let's say you have to go to the hospital and, for whatever reason you're injured. How are they going to be, your wives going to be able to come see you? Which one's going to be able to come see you? Are they going to be barred because they're not considered family in the eyes of the state? And how to get around that with either trust or some sort of contract. I'm very curious of that side of things.
Yeah, every man should start, if you don't have one already, you want to start planning what type of trust you have. Like, my paperwork and stuff like that is actually pending. So I actually built one based on my my upbringing. So I've actually given it a name based on some of my patriarchs, and as well as the matriarchs of my family. So you want to have a family trust. You also want to have a family bank, because you can build that too. That's how a lot of the wealthy people stay wealthy. And you have a holding company under that. Okay. Then you have your subsidiaries under that. And trust can't be touched by the law. They can't touch that. They can touch your companies. They can get your personal income, but they can't touch your trust. So your trust fund, they can't do that. So yeah, you want to have that. And what you're talking about, is actually called a power of attorney. So you want to know which woman is going to have the ability to do that. Now, what I say is, if you have an actual blood brother that you trust, or some of your brothers, your non-familial brothers, okay, your fraternal brothers, okay, you want to get one of them to handle certain things, because remember, your brothers are the ones, more logical. They're more logical. You don't want your women ever touching most of your money like that. That's one reason why I always tell men, be careful when you open up a business with your woman. I see a lot of guys, oh man, Cupcake is, my boo has been with me for 30 years. Da, 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 da. Okay, but Cupcake is going to take your money. So you need to watch that. You need to watch that. So if you have a business with your woman, it should be limited to the point of if you have to dissolve the company, or she leaves and you give her the company, or however you decide to divide it, it doesn't stain your economy. It doesn't destroy your economy. That's how you have to look at that.
Right. No, thank you for that. It's something I'm currently studying. So no, thank you for that. It's been great meeting you. I hope you come and talk with us again.
Oh, sure. Yeah, that'll be totally up to Rob.
One more time, Hondo, tell us where people can find you and how to pick up your book. And are the pre-sale copies for the new book available or not yet?
No, not yet. Not yet. I'm not gonna start something until it's actually done, because I want to do something special with that. I want to make sure it's in my hands and it's ready.
Gotcha.
So you can find me at Brother Hondo on Instagram. Just type in ampersand, or hashtag, Brother Hondo. Except to spell it out this time, BROTHER. And same thing on TikTok. I'm still building these channels. I don't get on social media much, but I'll probably be changing that too, doing a rebranding, going back to my family name and whatnot, things like that. So it's just something to expect. And even then, I'm doing that for some of the reasons that we talked about. So that's another thing, just if I can say one last thing, is like, everything you do should be funneling into whatever you are called to do by the Creator. Everything you do, every step you take should be funneling you right back to that, and constantly growing in power, no matter your age. If you start getting this stuff when you're 75 years old, start implementing it then. There's no, even though in traditional societies at 40, that's when you are reaching your crest of your family life and things like that, because things have been destroyed and now we are disjointed in our community structures. Our ages have been increased quite a bit. A lot of times the people ruling the planet, they want you to be a juvenile, and sometimes a juvenile delinquent when you're in your 30s and 40s, so you don't grow past 12. You still act like a 12-year-old. That's how they condition us, and we need to get past it. Even when we're raising our children, they should be advanced, and that's to battle against the forces of evil. You always have to think ahead like that. You always think 100 years ahead of where you're sitting at now. Always, even if it doesn't look like it. Always, people told me I wasn't going to write books. I was like, no, I'm going to write books. That's what I'm going to do. So I always remember, don't let people talk you out of your destiny. Always, no matter what. So
That's awesome.
but
That's a great
I'm
place
glad
to
y'all
end it.
enjoyed it. I appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Everybody give some likes and hearts for Brother Hondo. Follow him on Instagram. Subscribe to his YouTube channel and pick up a copy of the Polygamous Papers. And we'll be on the lookout for that new one that comes out this winter.
Sure.
Actually,
Yeah.
that's like soon in the next month or two, or
Well, winter. It's going to be
winter, end of the year. Got it.
Yeah. And I appreciate you having me on, Rob, too. I wanted to say that again. I enjoyed it. I thank y'all for showing up, here in the, I guess in the panels here, and those of you who came into the YouTube chat. I really appreciate it. I'm always honored that people would just call me, and I'm just a guy, former truck driver. I'm just out here doing writing books. So whenever somebody asks me to be on the show, I'm very honored by that. So I'm glad I could help you all out, because people help me, and I still have people, in my ear all the time teaching me. So I'll pass that forward.
No, we appreciate it. Everybody was very excited to hear from you. Thanks for dropping some knowledge on us and giving us almost 3 hours of your time.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, guys. We'll see you on the next episode. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't, and feel free to drop a comment and the takeaway that you got from this episode in the comments. We'll see you on the next episode.